I'd like to call the meeting to order. Oh, motion?
No, I didn't know if you were waiting for one.
No, okay.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have a motion for order.
Motion.
Okay, we're going to start out with special presentation.
So, Mr. President, tonight we have the beginning of a new era in Highland. We have renamed our Student of the Month to the Leader of the Pack. So we are going to recognize students from across the district for some of their accomplishments. So we're going to start out with the elementary school. I believe Mr. Darling and Mrs. Samuel are going to do that presentation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mrs. Samuel, and we're here to present an award to our Amelia Passerba. She has been nominated by her fourth grade teachers, Miss Beauvais and Miss Woodruff. She is being recognized for being a positive role model, being responsible, kind. She actively participates in class, and she produces exemplary work. So we'd like to present her with this award today and congratulate her and her family. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for being here. There you go. Congratulations. Yeah, there you go. And Mom or Dad, definitely. Thank you. Congratulations. Good job.
Mr. Cartwright and Mrs. Coburn, if you'd like to recognize your middle school student.
All right, so we have Riley Klein here, an 8th grade student with us at Highland Middle School, Mr. Cartwright, and this is Ms. Coburn. So Riley is definitely a leader of the pack for many reasons. We actually have some excerpts from some of her instructors, what they had to say about her. So here we go. So Riley is the definition of a leader. She is respectful, down to earth, kind to others, holds herself to high standards, and is trustworthy. Riley's not just an amazing student. She's passionate and resilient, but she's also a fantastic person. She's friendly, respectful, and courteous. Riley is emotionally and socially never afraid to follow her own moral compass. She's kind and inclusive to others. As evidenced by offering to help, an example is offering to help another student with their backpack every single day while the student was on crutches. Each day, Riley enters class with an infectious, positive attitude, ready to participate, and most importantly, willing to learn from her teachers and peers. This is my favorite one. Riley is an awesome individual. She makes me want to be a better teacher. So it just kind of speaks to her. I have to say, personally, I am on bus duty every day, which is why my shoes are still wet. But today there was only 3 students out of the whole bus duty who had umbrellas. Riley was one of them. And I said, she got off the bus and I'm like, I knew you would have an umbrella. And she just kind of gave me a nod. So congratulations, here's your award. And well deserved.
Wanted to come in
Great.
also.
Do you have a good enough job?
Yeah.
Wait, Samuel too. I'm so sorry, Samuel. Yes.
Can you get everybody?
Yes.
Then I'll take them.
With a team like that, how can you go wrong?
Thank you.
All
Great
right.
job.
If Mr. Murphy and Mr. Zimmer could join us to recognize the high school student.
Yeah.
Mr.
come on up, Nate, we don't have to call you.
Come on.
I guess he doesn't need an introduction. So as we transition our Student of the Month recognition to the new title of Leader of the Pack, it gives us great pleasure to award this honor to Nate Mormon-Horn. I've had the opportunity to get to know Nate for the last couple of years in and out of the classroom. One of Nate's teachers, Miss Whiston, has described Nate as having a great sense of humor, his willingness to always participate, that he is honest and always respectful. Another one of his teachers, Miss Meyer, had this to say about Nate. Oh man, Nathaniel Mormon-Horn is a young legend. He's curious and thoughtful, that he really engages in discussions, is involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, and is currently also interning for Assemblyman Jonathan Jacobson of Newburgh and Poughkeepsie. Very impressive. Nate loves politics and wants to study political science and possibly become a constitutional lawyer. Ms. Meyer goes on to explain how Nate is incredibly genuine and kind, and that he always draws out his peers and makes them smile and laugh, and that he looks for kids who might be feeling that they're left out of certain things. He's a huge goofball, Ms. Meyer's words, in the best way, and is self-deprecating, playful, and game to try new things. Nate has also volunteered with special needs programs such as Buddy Ball and Special Olympics, and also volunteered in the community, getting involved with Halloween in the Hamlet, the Caboose at the Walkway, and Light Up the Hamlet. Nate plays guitar and is actively involved in Model UN and the Interact Club. He is also on the track team and has worked at the YMCA Camp Wiltmeet in New Paltz, working for kids of all ages. It's our distinct pleasure to award Nate Mormon-Horn the Leader of the Pack Award for being just the type of Nate he is. Mom, Dad, you want to come up for a picture?
Yeah.
Smile, Kitty. You can see it underneath that.
And this third one. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You got them all full. Again, we'd just like to do another congratulations to all three students.
Okay, so Mr. President, the next thing on our agenda this evening is to recognize our recipients of the Mid-Hudson School Study Council Awards. Normally this award, it's actually a dinner, and we invite people to be with their colleagues from across the region, and we honor them at a dinner. Unfortunately, the dinner has been postponed now, or canceled the last 2 years, so we're going to recognize 4 individuals. One actually we will save till the next meeting because she had an emergency that she couldn't be with us this evening. So we'll start out with Mrs. McCulloch from our Transportation Department. And Dr. Boyd is going to do that presentation.
She out there?
Yep.
Come on in. All right, so I am very excited tonight to talk about Kathy McCulloch, who, as Mr. Freer said, won the award for support staff services. When Kathy was nominated by our previous superintendent, Tom Bon Jovi, he wrote a letter explaining all the great things that Kathy does. So in this letter, he talks about nominating Kathy McCulloch for the 2021 Award for Excellence in the category of support staff. Kathy oversees all of our busing, transportation in the Highland Central School District with the civil service title of head driver. In her short time in Highland, Kathy has made a tremendous positive effect on the drivers, aides, monitors, mechanics, and transportation support staff. More importantly, she has made a tremendous positive impact on the children and family who utilize our buses. In her 3 years in Highland, Kathy took over a transportation department that was in dire need of organization, retooling, and a boost in public support. With Kathy's extensive experience in transportation, coupled with her organizational skills and constant drive to improve our services, she has created the best transportation department I have seen in my 33 years in education. She is responsive to the needs of both the schools and the parents and has incredible attention to detail. Kathy has also spearheaded several fundraising activities with her department, including the Stuff the Bus campaign to collect food for the needy families of the district. Her leadership during the pandemic and her organization of the weekly food delivery to families was a monumental task, and Kathy took it in stride like it was just another day. One of the more difficult tasks running a school district is having your own buses. But with the right person at the helm, it has always been my experience that it is always better to have your own transportation department. Because we have Kathy, Highland has the most efficiently run transportation department in the county. From my personal experience, it has been absolutely amazing to work with Kathy. Calling her on a weekly basis to say, hey Kathy, I need this done. And it's never a question of if, it's just when and how. And she makes it happen all the time. It's an absolute pleasure to work with Kathy. She is here for the children, she is here for the community, and she's here for all of us. So
Thank you.
it's an absolute
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Our next award this evening will be to recognize one of our school board members, and that's going to be done by Mrs. Dudley Lemick.
Good evening, everyone. I am going to be recognizing our board vice president, Susan Gilmore. I'm going to start by reading Mr. Bon Jovi's words and then add a few of my own. I'm writing this letter to nominate Sue Gilmore for the 2021 Award for Excellence in the category of School Board Service. Sue has been a member of the Highland Central School District's Board of Education for 11 years. In that time, she has time and again shown herself to be incredibly dedicated to the children and community of Highland schools. Throughout her years, Sue has served as a member of several negotiation committees, the audit committee, and is currently serving as the board vice president. In addition to her service on the Highland board, Sue has served several terms on the Ulster County School Board, serving as students at Ulster BOCES. So she's our representative to Highland to the Ulster County School Board, or our BOCES School Board. Sue's energy, passion for students, attention to detail, and her fiscal responsibility to the taxpayers makes her an obvious choice for this award. Her dedication to board service is truly inspiring, as she is continually advocating for children and improved educational services for all. The Highland Central School District is fortunate to have Sue not only as a board member, but as our board vice president. With her leadership and board service experience, the future of education in Highland is bright. And I could not echo those words more. Sue, I remember when you were not sitting at the board table, but in the audience when I used to attend the board meetings as well. And through all of that time, Sue definitely has a voice for not only the taxpayers, but for the children. She wants what's best, she wants what's new, and what's going to take them not only be successful here, but beyond Highland as well. So thank you very much. We appreciate your service.
Thank you.
So we have one member of our administration who will be recognized. We will recognize her at the next meeting. That is Carol Potash, our Director of Technology. She unfortunately could not be here tonight, has an emergency that she has to attend to. I will now recognize the final recipient for the evening, Chief James Jamso from the Town of Lloyd Police. How are you? Clean up well. All right, so this is from Mr. Bon Jovi, our former superintendent. I write this letter to nominate Chief James Jamso for the 2021 Award for Excellence in the category of Community Service. Chief Jamso is a graduate of the Highland Central School District and has been with the Town of Lloyd Police for 31 years. In that time, he has and does on a regular basis show himself as incredibly dedicated to the children of the community of Highland. In his 31 years in the Town of Lloyd Police Department, Chief Jamso has moved up in the ranks to position that he currently serves as chief. When Mr. Bon Jovi came to Highland, he was serving as Lieutenant Janso and second in command to then Chief Wage. Chief Janso has continued the many community service projects of the previous chief and has added several of his own. Among the new initiatives is the Alzheimer's Project. Chief has also organized several fundraising activities, including the sale of wristbands, with all the proceeds going to the Alzheimer's Association. Another of his key projects has been the Teddy Bear Project. This initiative takes a teddy bear in every squad car so that in case of an automobile accident where a child might be in the car, the police officers can offer a teddy bear to the child to help calm and console them in the very traumatic event. Chief Janso has also recently brought the self-contained high school class to a minor league baseball game and arranged for them to meet players and get signed baseballs for all. The Highland School District and the community at large is incredibly blessed to have Chief Janso as their chief of police. And on a personal note, Chief was one of the first folks to stop into my new office with his friend, the large one. And they stop by on a regular basis just to check to see how we're doing. Is there anything that we need? Can they provide us some support or suggestions about how to make sure that our community stays strong and safe? So Chief is a valuable asset to us, and I congratulate you on a job well done. Back in school. It's like the Olympics.
Should have had music.
Should have.
I know.
Take your time, no problem.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
We just have another round of applause for all of our recipients.
And the last honorees that we would like to support and recognize this evening are our health staff in our buildings for all of the work that they did during this last 18 months, supporting our students, our families, being that first line of communication. Often isn't the easiest phone call to make, but they did it, and they did it very well. They kept parents informed, they kept our students safe, and they kept just the ball rolling. There has not been a time that we've ever walked into any of their offices and not saw a smile on their face and an answer for a family member of one of our students. So we would like to recognize our LPN, Sandy Beal. RN Kelly Hurley. RN Diane Gualtieri. And our health aide at the elementary school, Susan Morano.
Just
There
a
you
side
have,
note,
folks.
you know,
These are the folks that pulled it all together during.
yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I've talked to these four women over the last year. They really worked incredibly hard to keep all of the regulations, the changes, all throughout this last year. And, you know, I kept saying it seemed like every situation was different, and we had to really go through, okay, what exactly happened, who was in contact, and, you know, they kept it together and kept it safe. So thank you again.
Thank you.
last special presentation will be presentation of the most capital project.
We have a lot of work.
Yeah.
We
Congratulations. Good job.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
That's the next chief with him.
Yes.
I don't want to see that in the contract.
So, Mr. President, tonight we have a presentation from Duchess Bosse's. We have Dr. Corey with us, and then, oh, sorry, how did I do Duchess? Ulster Bosse's, and it's right in front of me. I must be thinking about where I'm going later, I don't know. Sorry about that, sir. And so Dr. Corey from Ulster Bosse's, and we have representatives from Bernard Donegan's office here to talk about their project as well. Again, my apologies, Dr. Corey.
That's okay, Joel, no problem. Thank you, and thank you to the board. I appreciate it. I always like coming here and speaking to you all. Usually it's about BOCES programs in general. This is about a more specific topic. But before I get started, I do want to thank Sue Gilmore, who I believe just got an award, I think.
Yes.
But also has spent the last few years as Highlands representative on the Ulster BOCES board. So thank you for all doing double duty. Really.
It's my honor.
Yeah.
We sent you our best, Dr. Corey.
She's your biggest fan, Dr. Corey.
Thank you, and, you know, so, here to talk to you about a capital project, and I titled the presentation, you know, a look back and a look forward, because I think it's important. But before we get started with it, it's really important for you to know that our students are your students, and our buildings are your buildings. That's really how a service agency works, and so, while we may have a separate entity called Ulster BOCES, we really are part of all 8 school districts that are components of Ulster County. But just a little bit of history. We go back to I'll go back before this slide, 1980. The present building, that is the CTE building up in Port Ewan, was leased from a private enterprise that was a shirt factory actually prior to that. That building was leased and converted into the present Career and Technical Education Center. That lease was a 10-year lease, and in the 9th year, according to the lease, there was an option to buy the building for $2.5 million. That option had to be exercised before the expiration of the lease, or else the lease would have ended and the building would have gone back to the original owner, who could have made anything with it. Of course, according to the rules in the state of New York, if BOCES wants to acquire property, you have to do a countywide vote. And so in 1989, the BOCES decided it made sense because they had paid over that 10 years well over $3 million in lease costs. So they decided it was a good deal, buy the building for $2.5 million. But in order to do that, they needed a countywide vote. They also decided at the same time, because our special ed building, which presently is at the Port Ewan campus, and is adjacent to the Career Tech building. That wasn't there. Our special education students were being educated in a vacated Grand Union, which is north of the Port Ewing site. And from all of the newspaper articles that I read, it was deplorable conditions. And so the idea was buy the CTE building, upgrade some of the infrastructure, and build a new CTE, build a new special education, alternative education building. That total was about $13.2 million. At the same time, they also decided that they needed kind of a central hub for the county, and they upgraded the facility. They built the facility at the New Falls campus, which is our administrative building, and they built a garage, expanded the garage for storage, and that was $1.2 million. And that went out to the county. It was a $15.2 million, and it was passed by 2-1 vote in 1989, and so BOCES acquired the property. $15.2 million in 1989, adjusted for inflation, would be about $33.6 million today, just to put it in framework of, in terms of today's dollars. The total renovation project that we're proposing is $39 million. And people hear that number when I talk to all of the school districts, and I'm going around to each of the boards of education. But it really is parceled out between eight school districts, and it's based on your percentage of the countywide student population. Highland's percentage is 8.5% of the total county population, student population, so you would be responsible if this moves forward for 8.5% of the total cost, or about $3.3 million. That's the total cost. That doesn't subtract building aid that you would get if you move forward, so it would be $3.3 million total cost. And also, since this is a renovation-only project, we're not building anything new, we're not buying anything new. It doesn't require a countywide vote. It simply requires an affirmative vote of the 8 boards of education, that make up our component districts. All 8 have to vote yes. If one district votes no, then the project, using this particular direction of financing, would stop. And our advisors, Bernard Donegan, will talk to you about those options moving forward. So this is renovation only. We're not acquiring new property. We're simply renovating our existing property. It's a complicated project because unlike a regular school, high school, our programs can't be easily relocated. So for instance, I was a high school principal. If we were renovating a section of our high school, I could relocate classes to empty classrooms and then do construction or renovation in those classrooms, seal off that part of the building, move to a separate part of the building, and so on. And I could do construction essentially year-round. I can't move the welding lab. I can't move the auto shop. I don't have a spare auto shop. I don't have a spare welding lab. I don't have a spare cosmetology. So it shrinks the construction window, the renovation window, to basically a 2.5-month period every year. Basically, our CTE center stops working around the middle of June. And I would have from the middle of June, really 2 months, to the middle of August, because from the end of August to the beginning of September, I have to get the building back in shape for kids to come back in September. So that makes it a complication for this project. We estimate that once everything is approved by state ed, which I'll talk about in a second, it would take four school years to complete the project. That complicates things because then we have to start estimating what things are going to cost at the end of the project. So I'll talk to you about a little bit of the timeline. Since October 5th, the Ulster BOCES Board of Education approved moving forward with this project, which is, we then started going out and visiting component districts. Between October 6th and December 1st, we will have visited all 8 component districts doing a similar presentation. If at that point we would ask districts to essentially vote on the intermunicipal agreement that we're proposing. Those votes based on board meeting agendas and things like that, we estimate would take place sometime between December 1st and December 15th. If everybody votes yes, the project moves to the next phase, which is developing, very detailed plans for all of the aspects of the renovation. We have plans now, but our architect, we would until we get the formal approval, we haven't asked our architects to develop the real hardcore detailed plans. You've all done capital projects and you understand that's a costly enterprise. We estimate that plan development, and we're being conservative in our estimates, would take up to a year. So between January 1st, 2022 and December 30th, 2022, we would be in plan development. Once plans are developed, they have to be submitted to the State Education Department for approval. Right now, before people are doing capital projects with the federal money, right now, the wait time for approval of state, local projects is about 10 months. Okay, it might be quicker. We do know there's a shortfall of personnel in the Office of Facilities at SED. Whether there'll be more people coming into that office or not, we don't know. But we're estimating 10 months, assuming that at the end of October 2023, that those plans are approved. We would then go out for bid on all of the equipment that we would have to purchase, and hopefully have all of the equipment ready to run with the first phase of the renovation. And the first phase of the renovation would take place in the 24-25 school year. Okay, 4 years to complete the project, which means the final project would be done in school year 27-28. So we have to estimate what is labor going to cost across all of those phases. What are materials going to cost? We know material costs right now are extremely high because of supply chain issues. Will that get better? Will it get worse? Will there be more inflation? So we've estimated on the conservative side because we don't want to run out of money. And we want the project to be done. Basically, so you get a sense, about 54% of the project is at the CTE Center, 27%, or total, 27% is at the Special Education Center, roughly 81% at those two buildings at the Fort Lee campus, and about 19% of the project is at the New Paltz site. Really, the work that's being done at the sites, a lot of it is HVAC replacement. I should tell you that at the Port Ewing campus and at the New Paltz campus, the equipment is original to 1989. Okay, it's 32 years old. We had a chiller go down this past year at our Port Ewing campus. We have 2 chillers. The motor burned out. They don't make that motor anymore. To purchase, there's only 2 used motors anywhere in the United States. We purchased one of the used motors. It was $45,000. The other motor, which is original to 1989, we're hoping it stays. Okay, we have to buy the other used motor to replace that until the project. So we don't want to spend good money after bad decision making. So most of the equipment is original to 1989. You know, technology has changed. Equipment is more efficient and effective. It's time. It's HVAC, ceiling lighting, fire alarm systems. All of our fire alarm systems have to be upgraded. Envelope repairs, windows, masonry, etc. And the list is there. Bathroom remodels. Some things are done at every site, but most of it, as you can see, about 63% really is those big ticket items: HVAC, electrical, site work, things like that. The soft costs, the fees for the architect, engineer, construction manager. We have a 20% contingency built in, and we also have a varying, an estimate of inflation built in. That last estimate of inflation, those 3 things together take up about $13.3 million of the $39 million. Again, we're conservative in our estimates because we don't want to run out of money. If we have money left over, it gets returned to the districts, just like, actually you wouldn't have to pay that last full payment because you would be financing it. If we run out of money, like any district, we would have to redline some of the projects that are planned. This basically shows you the percentage of kids in Ulster County, students, juniors and seniors who go to a 10-year history who go to CTE. It averages just about 26%, or 1 out of every 4 juniors and seniors in the county attend our Career Technical Education Center. That is either the highest or the second highest in the state of New York. Last year, 2 years ago, was the highest. I think one of the other BOCES around the state may have just creeped over with about 27%. So we have a lot of kids from the county attending our Career Tech Center. When I look at Highland, Highland's average enrollment at CTE over the last 10 years has ranged from a low of 55 to a high of 104, with an average of, it looks like about 80. When I look at that percentage of Highland's juniors and seniors who attend, on the average, 28% of Highland's juniors and seniors attend CTE, better than, a little bit more than 1 out of every 4 students. And you can see it ranged from 32% back in 14-15 last year, or the current year, it's 27% of your juniors and seniors attend CTE, and the average is pretty consistent around 28%. Again, I remind you, our students are your students, and and they are attending our buildings, which are your buildings. It has been over 31 years since Ulster BOCES has undertaken any major capital infrastructure improvement to the facilities that serve your students and teachers. Why now? That's a good question. Each year we spend money, and Sue knows this because we go over the budget. Each year we spend capital and operations and maintenance dollars for Band-Aids or temporary fixes on issues and problems. That's why now. That doesn't make sense to do anymore. In today's dollars, and this is important because I think it was in 2015 or 2016, Victoria, you can probably correct me on the date. In the executive budget, in the final budget, they exempted BOCES capital expenses from counting against the district's tax revenue cap. Unfortunately, because of politics up in Albany, the law that was passed basically said, subject to the issuance of regulations by the Division of Finance. Those regulations from the Division of Finance didn't get written until last year. And so right now, any capital expense on BOCES part does not count against your tax calculation. It didn't make sense for us to do this earlier because we didn't count it against all of the district's tax cap, and that's why we kept doing the Band-Aids. But now it does make sense. Our time is now, and I as always, thank you for your time and attention. If you have questions for me after tonight, I'll certainly come back, and any members of our team will come back to present. It's now my pleasure to introduce Melissa and Jason from Bernard Donegan Group, who will review the estimated financial impact of this capital project. Yes.
Too long, right? Couple meetings ago.
So now we'll focus in on Highland's financials and the $3.3 million share for this possible BOCES project. So we'll take a look at, we'll start on page 3 of the report that Jason just handed out for you. So there are 2 known variables within the current project. As you know, there are a lot of unknowns, like in any capital project, but at this point, the 2 known variables are each district's percentage of the project based on the latest actual Arwada count, which was from 2021 there. So you'll see in the center of the page, kind of outlined with that border there, that 8.5% of the project of all of the components within the BOCES, which translates to that $3.3 million of the share of the total $39 million project for that piece. So from there, we will take a look at the other known variable, which based on information tentatively from the architect, the cash flow and timing of anticipated construction and so forth, we have set up the 5 payments that would be due for each of the construction payback periods there. So what that means for Highland potentially is that of the $3.3 million, it will be split out over 5 different years, starting with the first payment being received on July 15th of 2022, and then the second payment, and thereafter up to payment number 5 would be each July 15th through 2026. So the first payment kind of focusing in on column D for July 15th of 2022 would be about $256,110. And then column G, the second payment, July 15th of 2023, would be $640,000, and so forth there for the remaining payments for that, in order to equal that just over $3.3 million for Highland's share of the project. So from there, we have a couple possible financing options that the district may consider in order to be able to make those payments. So the first scenario is on page 5 there for what we call a long-term multi-year financing schedule, which we would potentially, we could issue bond anticipation notes and then convert to a permanent financing, potentially after the 4 or 5 years there. And then this structure here is set up with a 20-year payback. The one thing that's good about if all the 8 components do adopt an intermunicipal agreement is that the district has the flexibility to set up any payment term there, so up to 30 years.
Yeah, so you can pick what works for you, as opposed to if we don't go that route, then it's just one flat payback for everybody, so.
So another option that could be considered, page 6, is the issuance of short-term financings for each of the 5 payments that would be due to BOCES. So essentially, you could issue a short-term note when the payment is due to BOCES each July, and then pay that off at the end of your fiscal year if the funds allowed. One option, and then after the end of the 5 years there, then you'd be done with your obligation for that piece.
So this would be like a good option if you wanted to pay cash as opposed to like long-term financing, but maybe you don't have the cash right on July 15th. So this can kind of, float you through if you want to wait for tax money to come in and wait for more of your aid to come in throughout the year, and then just pay the note off at the end of the year instead of when the payment is due to the BOCES at the beginning of the year.
One other scenario to kind of take a look at is very similar to the last option. This is all cash. If you were to contribute cash for each of the 5 payments due to BOCES, then that you wouldn't have any of the borrowings there, obviously, in that scenario. So a couple of different options there. You could do any variation of those 3 as it allows. The next few pages, we'll take a look at how each of those specific options, financing options, would look local share-wise, based on some conservative estimates and some variables there that we're kind of taking into consideration there. So column A, this is the long-term financing option here on page 8. So this would be, this currently is set up to be a 20-year payback for the principal payments there for that $3.3 million. So you'll see that in column A. Projected principal payment structure there. Bottom of column A, you'll see the $3,329,000 payments there, and then column B with estimated interest expense as you would issue those financings and make that payment to the bank. With the column C, the estimated debt service for those pieces, based on this structure here, that would be about $245,000 on an annual basis of just the actual debt service due. Potential BOCES aid that would be received based on the actual debt service that was paid. It's kind of shown in column D for about $50,000 or $55,000 a year, and then the resulting local share in column E of about $190,000 or so a year in that scenario. Does anyone have any questions about any of that yet?
Just, can you go back to that option 1, 2, and 3? and
Yep.
Just walk us through it again a little slower, so I have to.
We're gonna get
Yeah,
to, It might be easier if you
Take
do.
a look at the
Yeah,
finance.
yeah,
Do
we're
you have
on-
Doing the
finance
actual
schedules?
the first couple pages are just the
The
illustration.
next couple
Yeah.
ones are a lot
The actual
shorter.
numbers.
Yeah, so you'll see that as we go through here. So if you'll take a look at page 9, this is related to option 2, which would have been the short-term financing option, which would have been issuing the bond anticipation notes at the beginning of each year in order to make those July 15th payments to BOCES and then paying them off at the end of that fiscal year. So essentially in column A, the principal payments that are being shown there, the 256,000, 640,000, 811,000, are the actual payments that are due to BOCES, based in those respective fiscal years. And then column B would just be that interest expense, based on that borrowing, based on that structure there. And then total debt service based on, those variables. Once you get up to the bigger payments kind of in the main portion of the project, would be about $840,000 or so of actual debt service. And then you get resulting building aid or BOCES aid based on those debt service payments. And then the local share there in column E, as he kind of steps into the local share up to about $660,000 or so, for the main impact of the project. And then the cash option here, very similar. Column A shows the 5 principal payments, or the 5 actual cash payments that would be made to BOCES. And then there is no interest expense in that scenario. And then the related BOCES aid based on just the cash contribution payments. And then the local share based on that. It's very similar to option 2 and option 3 are very similar, just the difference of the interest expense for those short-term borrowings at that point. The other thing to kind of point out between page 8 and pages 9 and 10 is that if you take a look at the bottom of column E, the total local share would be about $3.7 million if you were to do a longer-term financing, say for 20 years, based on that. Once you get to a shorter financing, and then just straight to cash payments there, the actual total local share goes down to $2.6 million, about a $1 million savings in just interest expense savings at that point, if you're able to do the cash contributions instead.
When we say cash contributions, that's out of general fund, or that could also be appropriated out of reserve funds that we've set up?
We can double check on that, I believe it's kind of supposed to be out of general fund. I think we've asked the question, are you talking about like a capital reserve?
Yes.
Basically, yeah, I think we've asked the question before, and typically you're probably not supposed to use the capital reserve because they were really set up for your buildings, if you look at the language. So probably just out of general fund, but we can always
Unencumbered
ask
fund
the
balance,
question.
for example.
Yeah, fund balance.
If we're working on a current capital project, how did this affect us, the current capital project?
Yeah, so we know you have the project you're looking at and planning. I know Chris is here last month or about a month ago to present some initial looks at that, so we can kind of work hand in hand as all these things develop. But, you know, basically, if you're trying to kind of keep everything flat and fit this in with that, then we'd have to look at, you know, that project would probably have to be a little smaller than the initial numbers we had run. Or else, if we're putting it all together, then it can, you know, it is excludable, at least as Dr. Corey said, the local share on this. So while it might be a tax increase if you just kind of add the BOCES on top and do the project how you had already been planning on, it would be a tax increase, but it'd be excludable within the cap, so you wouldn't have to, you know, cut your operations side budget or go over the cap to add that in, so.
So if we add it into our current project, and we're getting 72% building aid on it, we'd still be getting the 72, adding that in, because I see that here being only 62 BOCES aid.
Yeah, the BOCES projects are aided differently, so you would get, you get aided based on your Arwada, and then the bond percentage of the project. You know, the other unique thing about BOCES projects, you know, you're used to with your own projects, typically the state aid is gonna be paid back over 15 years if it's just a renovation project. And that's regardless of what you do on the bonding side, they just pay over 15 years. With a BOCES project, they still follow the old aid rules from back like pre-2001, where they pay you aid based on debt service. So if you bond for 5 years, you get the aid back over 5 years. If you bond for 30 years, the aid comes back over 30. So you get a little bit more flexibility, and that's why we give kind of this range of options to show that, so that if you wanna kinda, obviously the downside of stretching it is you're gonna pay more overall, because you have the interest cost. But you can get a lower annual impact, which can help you with kind of pairing that with your own projects while minimizing the impact. Or if you have cash to throw at it, you can minimize the overall local share impact, but it's gonna be a bigger, annual impact in those couple of years they're paying cash.
So we have, being that we're developing a current capital project within the district, we have several options. We can build that into that project, and that'll negatively impact the overall amount that we'll have for our own use. Or we can standalone that and still go with our, that impacts.
Right, because this is separate, right? This isn't going to the voters, this is just, as of right now, is just gonna be an intermunicipal agreement
Right, it's
presented to the board.
Payment to
Yeah,
both seats.
so it'll factor
But
into your budget, but it
impacts
doesn't have to
our
go.
taxpayers, but right now, our current project that we're developing is tax neutral. There's no effect on the taxpayers. This will have an effect on the taxpayers if we bond that separately.
Right, if you go above and beyond kind of what your project fits into the drop-off.
Bonding separately or bonding together doesn't matter, it's the total amount.
Looking at them together separately, we might be able to,
Yeah, maybe.
Well, we
Yes.
used it by 3.3 million.
Yes, it does.
So I have a question, so if we had, say, what was it, let's just throw a number out there, $13 million, that we were going to go
That's
out.
16 million.
Okay, 16, so say our initial plan was 16, right? If we're saying we're gonna incorporate this as part of it, we would go out to the voters for 13, right? Because even though we're bonding that, do you have to go
no,
out to
it's
the
not,
voters?
it's not a perfect match. We had run some preliminary numbers just to take a look at it, because we figured this might come up with it. So I think the 16 million, if you wanted to keep everything tax neutral, all inclusive, we'd be looking at something closer to like 11 million. Or the other alternative that we didn't run yet, but we could talk about is, if you, as you're developing your scope, if your needs are closer to the 16 million, and that's where you wanna go, we could also look at, do you have any additional cash to put in beyond, the reserves we had already assumed? So if you have some fund balance to put in, we might be able to get that 11 million back closer to the 16 million if we put a little bit more cash in. So that would be another option.
I guess my question is, what do we go out to voters for? The net amount?
You go out to the voters for what you want your project to be. So this is a completely separate thing, because the voters, again, you're not asking the voters about the tax impact side of it. That's, part of the message you want to get out for the public rollout. But what you're truly asking the voters for is how much, here's the scope that we want to do, and here's how much it's going to cost. So you're really just asking for our project at our Highland CSD buildings, we want to spend 11 million, 16 million, whatever it is.
How did you go from 16 to 11 when you incorporated? You went from 3.9 to
Cost.
Another million?
Because the BOCES project is not aided at the same ratios as yours, so it's the local share of the project is not the same as if you were doing 3 million of your own work, because it's at a lower building aid ratio, it's your water ratio, not your construction building aid ratio. And it also, there's potentially gonna be some non-aidable costs in the BOCES project just based on the aid ceiling cap, so. So it's not a perfect, like, 1-for-1, 3 million at BOCES equals 3 million at your building.
But you said you brought it down to 11 million unless we threw more money into it, but I think we're all in with our reserve, because our reserve expires in 2.5 years. And I don't see this district moving forward with another capital project for many, many years. So this is the one that we really want to get done what we need to get done. If we reduce it by 3.3 million, that's a big hit on our vision.
Right, so that comes
So
back to the.
so we can't build that 11 million up by throwing more money into it, because we don't have the money.
Right, I didn't know sometimes, districts, especially like, this year or two
Got a
with
hidden
some of the
somewhere?
money, with some of the money that people say with like some of the closures from COVID or the stimulus funds, some people have had
Right.
additional money to put in, but that's, obviously unique to each district situation. But, back to the idea we were talking about at the beginning, there's a couple different ways you can look at this. We can say everything's gonna be, tax neutral, all inclusive, or the other way a lot of districts will look at these BOCES projects and say, hey, we've been managing our side of, everything for our buildings, and we're just gonna continue to do that, because we need to keep our buildings up as well. But, if we're also supportive of this project, because these are our kids too, and this also needs to be done, then that will just have to be, above and beyond what we've been managing with our own debt. So, that's a local decision, but that's, certainly a reasonable, logical conclusion we've seen other districts reach when trying to incorporate some of this stuff.
We don't have to go to the voters.
If this is the word, but I was just gonna ask Dr. Corey, if you could elaborate on what you were saying before, if all 8 districts do not pass this through, there was another means by which you have to,
We would then go out for a public vote.
it would be a countywide vote.
Yeah. And then the financing is the BOCES financing, and the flexibility that districts have to structure their debt will be lost.
Right.
Plus, it would be probably more expensive because we have to finance it through the dormitory authority, and there,
Yeah, it will be more expensive. There's a significant cost to issuing through the dorm, and you will also bond at a higher rate because dorm bonds are revenue bonds as opposed to your GO bonds, so the interest cost is also going to be much greater if you go through the dorm option.
When do we need to make a decision by?
we targeted, based on our schedule, December.
Okay.
So probably our meeting in December.
Or before, probably.
Yeah, that's artificial, we have some districts that have said they're gonna do it before December.
Yeah.
It's really, we just kind of set it up for our meeting schedule.
My only concern is we wanna move our project on a fast track right now, so I think we have to make a decision one way or the other fairly soon.
So these guys will be back in 2 weeks to tell us, here's the option with the most minimal impact to your bonding structure.
Yeah, and I,
Which
I
is the
guess one
first
other,
option, by the way.
thought on this, on how this all incorporates is, if you still wanna go out with the 16 million and say that's no tax increase, it's up to you, but that's still reasonable to me, because that's fitting into your existing debt drop-off, and that's looking at just your existing debt. And the BOCES project, if it moves forward, being on top of that, is no different than your O&M side of your budget, right? So when we say no tax increase for our capital projects, we're not saying no tax increase ever. We still need increases on the O&M side to run our budget, right? So we're just saying no capital tax increase. So depending on where you're at and kind of where everything ends up, that's still, entirely reasonable to, discuss it in that manner as you move forward.
Equivocation's fine, but when they get the tax bill, they'll see a difference.
So going that route, we take option one, and what you're saying, we can build that, our share after aid into, let's say, our O&M line item.
Right, it's gonna
Our
be,
general budget.
yeah,
Right.
it's gonna be in the BOCES line item, it's not in
Which,
your
which
capital.
looking at option one, on column E would be roughly $190,000 a year.
Mhm.
I'm looking at that correctly.
Right, based on that.
You'd be building in more than that, you'd be building in the 245, but then also getting more BOCES aid
Right.
as well.
Right.
Like other payment schedules, if down the road, we wanna address that sooner rather than later, does that become an option for Highland schools?
Like prepay it sooner?
Yeah.
So typically, when we issue a bond, there's gonna be an 8-year protection for the purchaser, right? So,
Right.
we can always look at putting in a sooner call, but usually you're gonna
You
pay a
just
higher
follow the
interest rate.
schedule.
Yeah.
If you do 8 years, then that's kind of free, so to speak, where you're gonna, that's what the people who bid on these bonds expect. So if you were doing a 20-year bond, yeah, you could, roughly halfway through it, be able to start paying it down sooner if you wanted. The other thing too, to point out, worth mentioning, we're still using pretty conservative rates in both the report we gave to you last month and this report, because we're not talking about bonding for a few years out. So these are kind of you know, hopefully worst-case scenarios, if rates stay out closer to where they are today, then the impacts could be much less for both projects. But we kind of like to, you know, start on the high side, kind of, you know, take a conservative look at it and hope it turns out better.
And if we went the cash route, we're saving roughly $1 million overall.
Well, right, but that
That's
also
paid out, that's
has,
paid out over 5 years.
we'll have to have some discussions
Yeah.
because our business official might say, yeah, but now there's some risk involved because if such and such happens, then we don't have the cash.
And again, these are just kind of some preliminary looks at it to give you an idea of like the magnitude depending on which way you go, but we'll, you know, be working hand in hand with you on both this and your own project as you move forward with both of them, so.
I'm excited for the Ulster BOCES facilities. Sounds like it's been long overdue. Certainly. I'm looking to support that, so as long as they get you a new chair over there. They'll work that out, they'll work that out, I know.
With a little hope to hang your medal.
Nice.
Any other questions?
Sure, I got a question for you. Sure. Currently, are all your classroom spaces air conditioned, or will they be as a result of this project?
There's all HVAC upgrades, and I believe there is air conditioning in all of them, would be. and also
In every classroom,
Yes,
regardless of what it is?
right now, they're not. Okay, they would be, they would all be compatible with MERV 14 or whatever that.
Yeah, that's standard.
As a result of this project?
The ones that we couldn't, yeah, as a result of this project, we actually looked at, you know, when we knew we couldn't fit the MERV 14 filters in, because of the age of the equipment, and I said, could we literally take the filter and put it on the exhaust side of, you know, external with duct tape, you know, just seal it in, and the engineers said we would burn out all the motors.
Yeah, right.
Yes, so you're, yes.
Right, and, you know, we're putting out a project, we're thinking about another project. That's one of the key components in it, for a potential component, and we're not sure if we're gonna get to that point.
Yeah.
Because we have to make choices.
Yeah, it's, the ventilation in that building is as if it was a shirt factory. We get constant complaints about air quality, we open up doors, put fans in the hallways, things like that. So it's been something we were looking at all along. It's just that when we did a building condition survey and saw all of the other things, because, you know, I think folks know that the way we used to handle these things is we collect roughly $500,000 a year on capital projects from all of the components. We save that up for a few years and then we throw it into a project. I think the HVAC system is like $13 or $14 million, and then we add in the electrical and fire alarm upgrades. And I thought, well, if we continue to do it this way, it'll take us 40 to 50 years to get to all of the punch list items. It's time to do a bond issue. And then we hesitated because it counted against district's caps until they issued the regulations to say it doesn't count against the district's caps. So that's where we are.
They left the door open for us here.
Dr. Corey, looking at your breakdown, I mean, you're speaking about HVAC, it looks like you're dealing with all what I call the MEPs, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing.
Yes.
I mean, that's considerable. Are you doing anything to upgrade the equipment in every area?
Yeah.
I mean, to the new standards, the new modern technology?
We're planning, you know, that when it opened when it finished in 2027, 28 school year, that would be, each of the labs would be equipped for that particular facility for 2035 to 40, as best as we could project. So for instance, it is unlikely that the auto shop will be the auto shop today will be the auto shop of the 2030s. So built into our plans is upgrading the equipment in each, you know, and really the layout and structure of all of those rooms. Yeah.
Jason, question
question for you. Let's say that Victoria works her magic and we have this 256,000 in year one and we have 448,000 in year two. But then she says, all right, we need to borrow years 3, 4, and 5. Can a melding of that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. That's, one of the things that's laid out in the intermunicipal agreement is we're gonna ask all components as part of that to agree to adopt a bond resolution regardless of whether you anticipate paying cash or not, so that if anything changes over these 5 years, you're ready to bond if you need to. So we can always do, we've had other BOCES we worked with where some of the components started on track of borrowing, thinking they were gonna need to do that, and then had a few good years where they were more flush with cash, and so they just paid off the notes before we're going to bonds. We've had other ones who paid some of the smaller upfront payments in cash and then financed, so certainly, we can be very flexible with our options. This was just meant to start to, get some of the ideas flowing with these options tonight.
But Sue, that flexibility would disappear if we went out for a county vote.
Right, right, that's only with the IMF.
Oh, okay,
risk.
that's good to know.
If it's countywide vote, then the BOCES just issues a bond for one term, probably potentially 15 years, and that's just what everybody gets, so. No option for cash, no option for other terms.
So I heard you clear, you need all 8 component schools to vote yes. If one doesn't, then it goes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a unanimous vote of all the members of those boards, it's the board vote.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we might have a member of the audience in the back that has a question. Are you still interested?
Yes, thank you, appreciate it. Those projections on page 5 and 6 that you're showing us, whose credit rating is it based on? Is it based on BOCES credit rating, or is it based on Highland School District?
It would be based on your own, it would be a Highland Central School District bond that you'd be issuing, so that's, back to that distinction between the IMA or the DASNY route. If it's, the IMA route, then each of the 8 components is issuing their own debt under their names, just like you would for any other project. If it's the, county-wide route, then it's the BOCES issuing the debt, and it would be under their name.
So under that premise, right, say that, let's fast forward, say that we got or they got the vote to go ahead and issue the project. What's BOCES credit rating right now? Is it above investment grade? I mean, what kind of rates are we looking at?
Well, I don't know, the BOCES probably doesn't have a credit rating right now because they have no outstanding debt, so there'd be no reason to have one, but, regardless of what rating they get and how it compares to yours, most likely the interest rate will be higher than if you were issuing your own bonds because it's a revenue bond instead of a general obligation bond. So typically when we, like for instance, if we were talking about your own project here at Highland Schools, we would say expect the rate to be about 50 basis points higher if you were to issue your bonds through DASNY versus issuing your own bonds.
Any other questions? Are we all satisfied at this point in time?
Yeah, I think that was quite a bit of information, very thankful. I think we'll be able to take it.
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody again.
Yeah.
Good presentation.
It makes it easy to understand. Yeah, Wrote it down.
All right, now we're at the public comment portion of our agenda, and these agenda items only. Any topic related to the agenda may be addressed, except for personnel or specific student issues. Any emails received regarding curriculum concerns will be forwarded to the appropriate administrator to address. If an individual cannot attend the meeting due to unusual circumstances, please indicate in an email to the district clerk. School board encourages public participation at its meetings to allow for efficiency in conducting meetings. and to give each speaker a fair opportunity to present his or her views, the following shall apply to the public speaking portion of the agenda. Each speaker shall state their name. Any questions/concerns be submitted in writing with speaker's contact information, name, address, phone number. Each speaker shall be limited to a time, approximately 10 minutes, which is agreed upon by the board. The board will not permit discussion involving individual personnel or students. Direct all remarks to the chair. Community members may not poll individual board members nor debate other community members in attendance. Members of the community are encouraged to also present their comments in writing. Undue interruption or other interference with the orderly conduct of the Board of Education business will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. So, do we have anybody for public comment? Okay, thank you. Curriculum and instruction, principals' monthly reports. Each month, the principals update the board with current events occurring in the building.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all again. Just a few quick logistical updates to the principal's report that I sent in this month. So far this month, Mrs. Samuel and I have completed about 20 observations. So we're well on our way to getting a good start to the year in that respect. In addition to that, we've done 3 fire drills at this point. They all went smoothly, so that's been a positive thing within the building. We did start our instructional support team meetings, so that's an avenue for teachers to refer students that they're concerned about social emotionally or academically. And then we have a kind of a panel of specialists, including Mrs. Samuel, that meet each week to talk about student progress, identify areas of concern and weakness, and focus on monitoring that progress so that our students can achieve what we would like them to achieve. We did bring back our kindergarten wild rumpus this year. Unfortunately, that was scheduled for today. And because it was going to be held outside, we rescheduled that for Thursday. So we're excited to have, some parents come to the building. We split it up a little bit differently. I know in the past it's been more classes, I believe, than we have it. We're doing 2 classes at a time right now. But it's a nice opportunity to get the parents involved back in our kids' education. And we're excited to have them back in the building the next couple days, or at the building, I should say. And then the last thing I wanted to share was, last Friday was the homecoming football game, as many of you know. And I know that's, an exciting time for our high school seniors and high schoolers in general. But it was nice to see for me, as the first time I've had a homecoming football game in this district, that really trickled down to our elementary school students. And there was a buzz in the building that Friday where a number of our youth travel football players from within Highland, they wear their jerseys every week, but they were very vocal in the cafeteria about having the opportunity to play on the football field that night. So I just wanted to share that does have a really positive effect on the building and on the students within the building. So thank you all for your time, and any questions pertaining to the report that I had sent in? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I just have 2 updates. The first update is we have survived the first 2 days of 6th graders using their lockers. So this is a huge accomplishment for our 6th graders. They are excited, they're finding their way and navigating how to stay organized and what they're going to bring with them to each class using their lockers, which is awesome. Next week, our 7th and 8th graders will begin using their lockers as well. So everyone at the end of next week will be using their lockers and moving forward. The second update is we have also started our after-school activities and clubs. Each day so far, we've had over 100 students staying after to participate in our after-school clubs and activities, which is awesome. And next month, when intramurals start, we probably will have about 130 to 40 students staying after for our activities, which is awesome. And I'd like to give a big shout out to Brenna Sheely. She took an opportunity when she saw students struggling with using their lockers, and she made a find it in here. She made a chart for 6th graders and 7th graders, and she's been hanging them up. And we're now gonna put these
that's
in our welcome packet for 6th graders to help them learn how to use their locker and with our 5th graders. So this is really awesome, and kudos to Brenna for going out of her way to do this, and the kids really love it. So wanted to give a shout out to her.
And again, I think that after school, for, I think it's emphasis on reading, right, correct?
We do have a reading club after school, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
That, I think that was in your report, and that
Oh,
was-
our sale program.
Yes.
Yes, that starts
yes,
tomorrow.
that was
Yep.
just wonderful to read that, and I'm really excited about that.
And there's
Concept.
transportation for those students who stay, correct?
Correct, yep. Mrs. McCulloch has been phenomenal.
Great,
And,
yes, and I saw
she's-
that in your report. Like,
Yeah.
It's so important because a lot of times our most vulnerable in all these different groups are the ones who can't get access to those resources. So if I can't get home, I'm not gonna stay. So important, so important. Thank you.
Yep, kudos to Kathy, I don't know if she, oh, there she is. Without the bus transportation, that would not be possible, and she's made more buses appear on a daily basis than I knew was possible, so, it's amazing. I completely all on her, so I very much appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Anything
So
else?
just to add to that, that is a huge challenge, but our parents also have come through. We put out an email to all of our parents that if they are available to transport, it does help in our afternoon transportation issues
Right.
that we're.
If you only really need 2 buses, stop asking for 3 or 4 or that. type of
Right,
thing.
so
that's
parents
good.
have come through, hopefully that continues, especially when the numbers start to grow, because there aren't extra buses, so
Right.
kudos to the
We're
parents.
coming
thank
up
them.
on marking period 1, and that's when it becomes real.
Right, absolutely.
And also kudos to the teachers too, that are
Yeah.
gonna be part of this.
Yes, they've been very organized and have schedules and all kinds of sign-up sheets and everything, so they've really gone out of their way to make sure that as many students as possible can be a part of as many of activities as possible, which is great.
Thank you.
Nice
work.
Good evening, everyone. I just have a few additions to the high school principals report. As you're aware, last Friday was homecoming, and we had quite a successful pep rally the last 2 periods of the day outside on the football field, but you're gonna hear a little bit more about that from Maggie, so I'm gonna skip over that for now. Last Thursday, October 21st, students in Ms. Petrosoff's and Ms. Sylvester's 9th grade English classes spoke with Vinnie Bagwell, the artist responsible for the Sojourner Truth statue at the walkway over the Hudson. Bagwell zoomed in from her studio in Yonkers and talked to students about her life, work, and how our students too could find the artist within. Students will use Bagwell's talk as an inspiration for the creation of their own monument ideas and dedication speeches to people they wish to honor in weeks to come. And finally, students from Ms. Meyer's 12th grade college writing and rhetoric class collaborated with Wilklow Orchard just last night, right across the street, to host a reading of their college application essays and personal narratives. 15 students read their essays out loud, while other students DJ'd, designed posters, designed promotional artwork, or published their essays in the collection. The event was very well attended, not only by students and families, but also by faculty from all 3 buildings. Becky Wilklow, who was an invaluable member or partner in planning and hosting this event, reported that there were as many as 75 attendees there. Students pushed themselves to be brave and shared their writing and their experiences with a large audience. It was moving and wonderful to see. The students of writing and rhetoric said it best this morning when we asked them about it, and I quote, said, "It was so vibey." Which is a positive vibe. It was great, and I'll admit it was very vibey. It was a great place to be, right? Right, Maggie?
Oh, yeah,
It was
very
very
vibey.
vibey. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Mr. Zimmer, last Friday, with the moving up of the scheduled time of the football game against our rival to the south,
Yes.
Monroe, did a lot of students stay on campus at the end of the day? till 5
I
o'clock?
don't think so. We did not have any more than usual staying. So there wasn't a problem. Mr. Murphy and I stayed after school and did a few extra rounds on the property, and we did not notice anything out of the ordinary. Most left and came back for the game.
That was a well-run event.
Yes.
That night.
Agreed.
And,
I personally think it was the best of both worlds, because still it was under the lights, half the game was under the lights, and it was nice, but the first half of the game was during the day, and it wasn't as cold, and it was nice. It was a little bit, I wasn't sure how it was gonna play out, but In my opinion, it went very well.
Moving the game up with the best of the intentions and the best of reasons, and it worked well.
I think it was a win-win. Well, then when I got home at 8:30, still felt like
It
11
did.
o'clock at night. But I got a few extra hours sleep that night. I'm like, oh, it's not 11, it's only
It
8:30.
did feel like midnight.
It was nice.
Job well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have director's function report. Anybody got any questions?
Really, I'm already asking about after-school transportation. Thank you for the reports. They seem very, very comprehensive. It appears all is going very, very well.
Can I add
So I
something?
don't, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank everybody for recognizing me. I do appreciate it, but it's with the support of everybody here. The principals, vice principals, and all the rest of the staff, and I greatly appreciate it. And Pete has been a great support with his staff. 3 of his people help me drive to get through the days. So we're all working together, and I'm proud to say that I belong to Highland School District, and I do appreciate everything. Thank you.
Don't let him razz you about that medal either. We'll get him.
We're gonna make his out of a hubcap.
One he has to assemble himself,
Shine it.
I do have, on Karen's report, so Karen, could you, changing these spreadsheets on me, is this, the formal first quarter report for, testing?
Yes.
It is, okay. I just printed it out this afternoon, so I really don't, I don't have too specific comments yet, and I know it's just the first quarter. But if I look at, the first page for, let's say, grade 1, where I see there is a 71, and so that means 71 students took the test, or,
Yeah, here, I can kind of walk through, just
okay,
so you know what you're
look
looking
at
at.
this one, okay,
Sure.
thanks.
So if you look at the first column, you are correct, Sue. First grade, that's 71 total students. So then if you go across, what we have, especially in first grade, is you have some overlap between 2 different tests. You have the early literacy test, that's at K2, that's at that middle column. So 51 of those 71 students took the early literacy test. And that test is designed specifically, it's mostly kindergarten and first grade, maybe a couple second grade. And that combines both reading and math skills because they're pre-readers. So they don't necessarily do the full reading or the full math test because it's just not appropriate for students at that level.
They treat it
But-
like a language.
Yeah, it's more kind of whole language. But in first grade, we have students who are still at that pre-emergent level, but also students who are ready to take the reading and the math test. So you kind of have a mix. So some of our students took both. They took that early literacy one, that's at 51 students.
Okay,
But then 65 of those students actually took the first grade math test, or the math test. And 13 of them took the reading test.
okay.
All right, and it just depends on kind of where they are, especially with the reading, where they are. Your reading is determined by letters, so it's determined at kind of where they are, and
Usually
usually,
an E and F, when they're in font to something else, they usually switch around level E, level F, up to the second through 12, which that's really what the reading test measures from second grade on.
okay. So that's why there's so few students who took the reading test in math. In first grade. But then if you look at second grade,
Okay.
you have fewer students who took the early literacy test at 44 in the middle column,
Uh-huh.
because not as many of them need that lower level. And most of the students took either took the math and the reading.
It's normal as the year progresses for the numbers to change. So you're gonna see less and less take the early literacy in first grade and transition to the reading, star reading test, which is what we wanna see.
All right, so if we can just take a look at the second grade.
Sure.
So there's 128 kids in the class, so 93 total took,
The math test, the first column is math.
so why wouldn't they all take it?
Because for those early literacy students, if the early literacy test actually combines reading and math skills. So basically, they're not at a level where the math test would be appropriate for them to take yet.
The TAB and the math test starts where it starts at, it's very labor intensive with reading. So if they're really still at the emergent literacy level, it's not really appropriate for them to take a reading math test. You're not gonna get accurate scores.
But that is why there's more students who took the math than took the reading. You know, see how there's 70 over in the far column? That's the reading test.
I might call you on this, just so
Sure.
I can really understand the mechanics of what's, because my aim is just to get a picture of the entire class.
Expect your concerns to increase as you get more involved with the data.
So, okay, yeah, so we can talk about it soon if you want to.
Okay, and so there's nothing for ninth grade. So what does that mean? There was just no,
I'm not sure what you mean, nothing for ELA or nothing for?
well, there's
There's no
nothing at all.
percentages.
There's no numbers.
In ninth grade.
Oh, it should be on there. That's a typo, I can get them to you, they should be on there. Because they have the skills broken down, it just, for some reason, whatever, the way the PDF saved, it didn't save the numbers. I'm sorry about that.
So yeah, I think I'll give you a call, Sarah.
Sure.
Or maybe I'll come over.
Sure.
Thank you, Karen. Oh, one other question, the demographic data that you broke down between, white and black, students. Why did you just do white and black? What about the other demographics?
We can break that down, and we do have that. It's just a lot of the work that we've been doing and what we've been cited with, that I broke it down for what we're working on in the district right now, and what the concerns are with.
For our
TSA.
I'm happy to break it down further for you guys, we have that. I just gave you what I thought you were concerned with at this point, rather than
Well, it'd be nice
overwhelm you
to-
with some numbers.
Just to see if there are any disparities or things that we should have our eye on, in order to maintain equity. If there any numbers of discrepancy pop up, it would be nice to know, yeah.
Right, and I look at them as it is, and I go through and discuss them with Sarah and Joel. And it's also, in the elementary school, it's our first real administration of the test with us owning the test. The last time was the first trial. This is our first time actually doing it in the elementary school. So I always say to people, give the test the second, third time, because the students need to get used to this.
Right.
This is the first time any of them have ever taken a standardized test. Plus, if you also throw into the mix what I had put in the chart about testing and their schooling, like a third grader last year they really ever had a normal school year was kindergarten. So things like that we have to consider.
Nope, I hear you.
We gotta be just mindful of what their needs are,
Yeah,
especially with social emotional regarding testing.
Maria, do you have anything to add to your report?
Well, we had our high breakfast today at the elementary. We delivered 375 meals on 4 different carts. So the kids are starting to get used to it. Our lunch numbers are coming up steadily, so we're looking forward to that. At the high school, we have a little bit of a challenge of getting all the kids through the line. And we so I spoke with Mr. Murphy and we addressed that. We just need like 2 more pairs of hands for about 20 minutes a day. So I've gone in to help, and it's a nice experience because the kids really are so nice and they come to the line. I was down at the elementary school and I saw the kindergartners, and they were just so happy to have someone to listen to them, like with their name and what they're gonna have to eat. They're a delight. So when you have a really bad day, go down to the kindergarten.
That's right.
But, we're running into some supply issues. Well, it's getting a little bit harder. Uncrustables are very hard to come by, and those are kind of like the favorite for the kids. So I'm not sure if we go back to the handmade peanut butter and jelly or anything like that. Had to change the menu a little bit with fries. Haven't run into a chicken issue yet, but I expect all that to be coming. I'm trying to stay ahead and order things that I don't have on the menu yet, and so they'll be there for me to menu.
Has the new freezer been helping with that
Oh my
in terms
gosh,
of storage?
yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Because
Yeah,
obviously
we
now
have-
you have to buy when you can get it and
Yes.
anticipate.
Stock it up.
Definitely, and we have a lot of freezer real estate in the district, and they're all working well.
Good.
How many point of sales do you have up here, Maria?
Just the two on the main line, and then we have a snack room.
You have two though, all right, I got you.
Yeah. And we do have both of them manned. I mean, at one point, previous COVID, we tried to save on labor and only do one register, but
It really jams it up fast.
it does.
Yes.
It does. And these kids are getting, when compared to other districts, they're getting more choice. A lot of districts are just doing like a basic meal, take it and go. So I did not want to go there right away.
Yes, appreciate it.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Like Maria said, we're running into things that are starting to become short supply. Paper towels are back ordered to the end of November. Things like that are starting to have an effect on.
I have a stock in my basement.
Might be where they've been
Don't wanna
going.
give it away, Joe.
Take away his key to the supply.
I know, it's ridiculous. Too many.
We're gonna change that lock.
Oh, I can? All right, thank you. Crazy way for purchasing of the Bounty paper towels.
But PPE and wash supplies and all that, good to go?
That stuff we're good on. The only thing is normal custodial supplies, like some of the soaps and stuff that we use for the systems we have, we've had to resort to other things or to filling containers and adding them to those systems so that they can continue to work.
Thank you. Now, you guys good?
Yeah.
Now we're at the point of the consent agenda, I believe it's like items A1 through D1. You just want to check and see if you agree with that. Have a motion, please. Sue and Heather. Is there any questions or concerns on any of these items?
Just on a consent agenda, what you do, what we should be doing is you would ask something to be pulled out if there's any concern prior to the motion.
Or if you would like to vote on something?
Yep, last one.
So, at this point in time, we, good? I have a motion, please. Ed?
I think we just got it.
You have a motion.
We'll take a vote. Sue and Heather are your motions.
Okay,
All
all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? So carried.
So, Mr. President, we do have one new hire here with us this evening. I'd like to introduce Jaleel Yearwood. He's going to be Cafeteria Monitor down at the elementary school. I promised him it wouldn't be this late. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, appreciate it. I'm looking forward to working with the kids.
Welcome.
Go home, get some
So
sleep.
you're
Nobody
here
else
much
is
later than I
ready.
promised you, so if you'd like to go.
Thank you, y'all have a good night.
Thank you, welcome. So hi, Liz.
See you later.
Okay, student representative, Maggie?
So I'll start off with the elementary school. I spoke to Mr. Darling, and he said that the local fire department brought 3 fire trucks and came to the elementary school for students K through 3rd grade to learn about Fire Safety Week. Personally, I remember doing that when I was in elementary school, so I know that's really important for the kids. And also, like he mentioned, the kindergarten rumpus was supposed to be today, but again, it got canceled. So for the middle school, I spoke to a couple of the actual middle school students and also Ms. Coburn. They had Spirit Week last week. There is also a new club called Musical Theater Club. Modified sports are having a fantastic fall season, and they're so happy to see so many students participating in the fall modified sports program. On Friday, the Highland Middle School PBIS team will be hosting their first ghost games in the gym for students. They're excited to bring back some of our HMS PBIS games and activities for our students. Students will be participating in different Halloween-themed relay races while we reinforce the different school-wide expectations with students. They are also hosting a Halloween costume contest this Friday for students and staff during the relay races. Of course, school rules and dress codes still apply, and we're also doing that at the high school on Friday. Tryouts for Highland Middle School the musical are happening this week, and they will have a lot of students trying out and being part of the production crew. And also I had the locker situation down about 6th graders starting to get their lockers this week, 7th graders next week, and then 8th graders the week after. All right. And then for the high school, I have a lot more about this, which is kind of funny because, I mean, it makes sense, but still. We had Spirit Week last week that went into the pep rally, which I have to say was my favorite one yet. I've only had 2 prior to this year, but it was still, I could tell that the participation was a lot more than normal, and I think that's mostly because of COVID. Everyone has been distanced and quarantined and whatnot, so it was really good to have everyone there showing their school spirit. And also this is the first time that I've had it outdoors. We haven't done it outdoors in a while, so it was really nice to have everyone getting some fresh air instead of cramped in the gym. Some new clubs at the school are Book Club, the Future Medical Professionals Club, and People Who Code Club. These clubs have been very helpful in uniting Highland students in their interests. Most fall sports are over, close to over, and some winter sports are beginning to do open gyms to prepare, which will be very beneficial for our teams. And as Mr. Zimmer said, the event at Wilco's was a great opportunity for students to read their college essays to peers, teachers, and family. A few weeks ago, I went to a meeting for the Ulster County School Boards Association. I was put in the hot seat, if you will, and answered questions regarding COVID at our school. It was great to hear the perspectives of students from other schools, and it was just an overall great experience. They let me know that if anyone is interested in going, they'll have meetings, and I also have a pamphlet, so if anyone has any questions, you can let me know. And lastly, I'm an editor in the yearbook club, and we are putting the Board of Education members in the yearbook this year. So just a heads up, next week I might come with a camera and take pictures of them. So I didn't want to do it tonight. I didn't want to just be really abrupt, but I'll, next week, or next meeting. That's all I have. Any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Megan, I have to tell you, I watched you in the hot seat.
Yes, I was going to say that.
That had to be one of the most enriching school board association meetings that I've been to. For all of you to open up emotionally what you went through during COVID was, it was a gift. And the way that you were all able to just look inside of yourself and to be reflective. And I think I said this to everybody that was there, you guys are wise beyond your years, and it just, you were amazing, and
Thank
so
you.
were the other kids.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Everyone was very open about their experiences, which I wasn't really expecting, but it was great.
It was wonderful. Great job.
Thank you.
Maggie, I'm just gonna add, that was probably one of the best, most comprehensive reports we've heard from a student in a really long time. So you should be proud. Thank you so much for representing
you.
all 3 buildings. Very nice.
Thank you so much.
District superintendent comments.
As Mr. Darling said, we have gotten started with observations. I am nowhere near his number of 20. That's very impressive. Nice work, Ms. Sanders, Mr. Darling. Ms. Dudley Levick and I, we observe all of the untenured teachers throughout the district. So those are ones that we definitely focus on as we're looking at some of our newest staff members, ensuring we're providing support and feedback, as they enter our Highland community. So far, the teachers continue to impress. We're very excited about the work that we're seeing from some of our newer staff members, even some of the ones that are untenured but have been around for years. We just received word that we're getting grant money through the American Recovery Plan, specifically through IDEA. So it's similar to the money that we received through the 611, 619 grants. So we just got $93,000 that we have to take a look at how we're going to look to spend it. This is a grant that they always predate these things. So they announce them in October and it says, oh, it started July 1st. So the grant technically runs from July 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2023. There's no due date, but we're starting to look at what's allowed to be, what you can spend it on. There are aspects of it where, like the 611 and 619 grants, that it's flow-through money, so it goes to some of the private agencies that house some of our preschool students and some of our out-of-district students as well. But we'll be taking a look at how we can utilize that money as well for some of our students with disabilities. We do have Child Protective Services coming next week to meet with our mental health support staff, just trying to build some stronger connections and strengthen our relationship with them and look at ways that we can just work together. Unfortunately, when we have to make some of those calls, it can be challenging and difficult, so we're just trying to, we're bringing them here in person to talk to our staff so we can have some in-depth conversations. So our staff can, voice some of those things that have come up as concerns to them in the past when they've gone through some of these issues. So we're excited to kind of strengthen that area, although it is an unfortunate one, we do have to go that route. And you should have received just the electronic copy of the special ed handbook. You can see the very, very comprehensive work that our special ed cabinet has gone through over the last couple of years to produce that document. So now that we have it, it will be a living document that we can update yearly or even throughout the year if we're making changes to things. And then as staff members change, of just contacts. And just having a place for them to go to for, especially for our new folks, of documents and things that are going to help them plan throughout the year, especially when it starts to look at creating IEPs and getting ready for annual reviews as well. So kudos to the special ed cabinet for all the hard work that they have put into to get to that document where it is today.
Good evening again. I want to talk a little bit. Our first during the school year superintendent's conference day is next Tuesday, November 2nd. And we're going to, the morning session is going to focus under the umbrella of our equity and inclusivity work that we've been doing for a long time now. For that one, it's going to be for all staff, and we're going to divide it into 4 sections. It will be over Zoom because we can't really bring large groups of people together yet. And there'll be 4 different sessions that they'll be attending during that. The first one session will focus very specifically on our students, our pandemic students, and some of the social emotional issues that they're facing. Our school social workers are going to be giving teachers some strategies and how to help support, on a day-to-day basis in the classrooms. One of the things I've been doing for the last month or so is meeting with all of our grade levels and departments to get some feedback on what teachers are seeing in the classroom. This is both anecdotal as well as academic. And one of the things that I really heard from teachers is, students are needier right now. They, and there's certainly, we've spent a lot of time the first month kind of reminding, and in some cases teaching, depending on the grade level, students how to be in school again. And what it means to be in classes or move around the building or interact with one another. So The school social workers will be giving teachers some strategies to help with that. Actually, not just teachers, it will be other staff as well. A second session is going to focus on a combination of refresher of DASA, which we did the first day of school, but that was kind of like the big legal definitions of Dignity for All Students Act and what our responsibilities are. This is going to be more specific to individual situations, focusing on our LGBTQ plus students and their rights, as well as the vocabulary and language around that population of students, so that as a whole faculty and staff, we have an understanding of who those students are and what they need for us to help them feel welcome and accepted in our schools. A third session is going to focus on helping teachers intervene in situations that might make other students uncomfortable, very specifically if it's racial language that's not appropriate, or other kind of groups like that. What I've heard a lot from teachers is that they want to do the right thing, but they're afraid that they might escalate a situation rather than de-escalate the situation. So again, we're going to be giving them some strategies for how to do that, and remind them of the reporting protocols as well when they witness that kind of behavior. And then the last session will be specifically for teachers. Last school year, in our district equity committee, the curriculum group developed a rubric for us to look at, teachers looking at units or lessons through the culturally responsive framework or lens. And what this group did is they looked at all different tools that were out there, and then kind of put them together and made them more user-friendly and specific to Highland. And then we had a group of teachers who, over the summer, I think, Matt, about 8 teachers?
Yeah, 9, I wanna say 9 or 10 maybe.
Okay, 9 or 10 teachers from all different grade levels who took, a lesson or a unit and used the rubric that the committee had come up with to kind of test it out. And they're going to present to teachers and talk about that whole process, like what they did to get to this rubric, how it worked this summer, where some of their areas of concern are, because of course they're trying to create something that applies across, again, a K-12 curriculum. And then get some feedback from teachers about what might make it more user-friendly for them and useful for them to, again, look at how do we make sure that our students feel that they're represented in the materials we're teaching, as well as, making, as we've always said, all of our students feel welcome in our schools. So those are the 4 areas in the morning. That's pretty much from 8 to 11. And then the afternoon will be spent more specifically in buildings, doing more building specific stuff. Other than Karen is going to do some trainings for our K through 9 teachers, specific to STAR, and really going through some of the reports that you can generate from that material and, kind of playing around with it a little bit more, so that they can start to very much individualize how they're looking at students. So that's one thing. Dr. Boyd mentioned the CPS is visiting. Some of our art and music teachers who are a K-12 department are going to have time to work together because they don't get as much time to come together as a group to, really talk through some of the things that they've been seeing from their students. And so it's going to be a quite productive day, a good mix of our overall DEI initiative, but also, again, the very important work that we need to do on an academic standpoint. And just to comment a little bit about these meetings, it's been wonderful to meet in person and really talk as a department or a grade level. And as I'm sure many of you can imagine, the feedback I'm getting, as I mentioned, students are very needy. I know everyone in here would also echo, we're seeing some behaviors that we haven't seen in a long time from students. And I definitely believe that is part of the impact of the pandemic. And, you know, a lot of our students faced a lot of trauma when they were home. And now they're in school and they want to talk about it, but they maybe don't know how, what's appropriate. So we're really working hard. I would say teachers are really feeling the stress. You know, now that's 2 years in a row of just really intense work that they're doing on a social emotional level as well as the academic level. And then from an academics, you know, as we've talked about before, there are learning gaps. There are things that students are behind where they would normally be at this point in the year, as we expected. So we're really trying to look at how, you know, how to be realistic in what students can achieve, but also how to help them make some progress and feel good about what they're doing. You know, whatever we're really seeing, especially at the elementary school, the second grade as a whole, you know, they haven't had a full normal year. And that very specifically is a grade level that needs more intense look. So our AIS services, both math and ELA or reading, are, you know, they have more second grade students than perhaps in the past. But we're also seeing some of those transition grades, the 6th grade, the 9th grade. You know, again, transition's always difficult, but seeing that change where it's been a couple of years. So, you know, there's a lot happening in the buildings, and you know, I'm very proud of the work our teachers are doing to try to support our students across the board. And I still have, I think next week I maybe finish up those meetings. It takes a while to get, you know, to fit everybody in around the other things going on. So that's all I have for tonight.
That's a lot.
There's a lot. There's a lot more going on, but this is what we're talking about right now.
I'm really happy that we as a district really push, you know, for the in-school model this year.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
I can't imagine what it would have been if we would have been another year out.
Well, I will say, and
Maybe in a portion.
I should have said this too, teachers are tired and exhausted, but every single group that I've talked to has also said how great it is to be back in the classroom with their students, you know, in person, and having those relationship building experiences.
That brings to, if a student has to go out on quarantine, how are they able to zoom in to the class, or how does that work?
For our secondary students, our 6th through 12th grade, yes, they are zooming in. For the elementary students, it's mostly asynchronous with some opportunity for some tutoring. But it, you know, the elementary classroom is a different environment, so it's a little harder to zoom in, not to mention just who they are as children.
Right.
But yes, at the middle school and high school level, they are able to zoom into the class.
Okay.
And just on a little COVID note, we've been very fortunate so far, knock on wood. You know, we definitely have students who are out on quarantine, but very few of them have been because of outbreaks within the building. It's usually because of, you know, contact outside of, and the same thing with staff, very few staff members. And teachers can now get their booster shots. We sent out, oh, sorry,
Another one
we
off
should have
my
coordinated
list.
there. Check this. I'll let you fill in more, but, you know, I definitely think, you know, that's helped us a lot, the vaccination.
I think I'm going first next time.
Right.
Not to steal anybody's thunder, but
That's
on
okay.
that, in terms of the weekly testing that's been done, that's required, and also people that have elected, not only staff, but students, how is that going?
Well, we haven't started with students yet. That is
Okay.
on our list. That should be, we're kind of gonna firm that up probably in the next week. We've had now 3 weeks of staff testing. There's been no positives, thank the Lord. And I want to commend our staff. You know, from my understanding, they've been treating the folks coming in from Ulster County very well. That's not necessarily the case in some other districts, so,
Yeah, I was on the superintendent's conference the other day and heard from almost all of them that they were having difficulties with staff, the way they were treating the outside folks, and we're pretty proud of our folks. They've been very respectful.
In-house medical staff?
No.
Or just
When you, like, we're bringing in an outside nurse to do that testing.
No, that's what I'm saying.
And our people are treating those outside folks with much respect.
I wanted to know.
And it's not happening everywhere.
I just wanted to know if it was our in-house medical people that were treating that way. or just
No.
staff in general.
We're talking
staff
about
in general.
the folks that have to get tested.
Yeah, and we're having complete compliance as well. I haven't had to really track people down or anything.
What is the delay with the students testing?
Well, when we set it up with the county, they wanted to get a little bit into it and kind of get the system down for adults, because with students, it's, adults were able to do it before school, or, it's just a little easier because you can just set up one time. We really have to look at with students, how we're going to send them, where we're going to send them.
Parental consent as well, right?
They have to have, yes,
We have
parental
that.
consent, and that, from the county, they'll have a form that the parents will have to fill out, giving the consent, and then we just have to look at who we have that wants to be tested and figure out a schedule for that,
I would hope that would go as quickly as possible, especially since we're heading to the holidays.
Absolutely, and then the other, again, in my opinion, great news, I saw a news flash this evening that the FDA is recommending approval for 5 to 11-year-olds that could start next week. So that's very exciting as well, to know that even more of our student body, will be adding to the protection. We're hoping that brings some of our homeschool students back as well.
Any more questions? All right, so,
Anything left?
You're done,
I
right?
do have we actually, just a public service reminder that we have that pod site at Highland High School on November 14th from 10 to 5. And Maggie, I don't know if you checked your email today.
Yes, I saw that, I was gonna talk to you.
But Maggie and I have been trying very hard to get her to be able to volunteer at that site, and it looked like just, when did I see you last Friday? At the football game. It didn't look like it was gonna be possible, because at that point, they were only looking for folks to volunteer who had medical expertise. The lady got back to us, I believe it was this morning, I sent you the email, right? So we're gonna connect, and Maggie's gonna be able to offer some volunteer hours, probably right here at Highland, and hopefully that encourages, I don't know how many of your friends are not vaccinated, but hopefully that will encourage some to come out and see you and take the shot. That would be great. So Maggie, thank you for doing that, and thank you for being an ambassador for that. That's awesome. Just as I know I put this in my weekly report, but I think it is important to say again, the Rotary Club did the Alzheimer's Walk, and they have raised over $5,600. So we had a contingent of Highland folks there. Sue Gilmore, myself, Chris Giangrasso from the elementary school cafeteria, and Christine Sorbello from our dispatcher over in the transportation department. We did the walk as folks here from the district. So it was a nice day, and it was actually over-attended, I thought. There were a lot of people, and it was we couldn't walk as fast as we wanted to, although Christine Giangrasso and I found a way to do so, because we just kept going out around people. So that was a nice event. Sarah did talk about the boosters, but the first boosters are available at Best Buy this Friday and next Friday. That information was sent out to all of our staff yesterday. Most of those appointments have been taken now, so they did say that if the appointments are taken, they will start including others in the coming weeks. So as we get that information, we'll get that out to our folks in the buildings. The support services, I mentioned this a little bit earlier today, met last Thursday and prioritized the 2 lists that we had been talking about. And we also met with the architect to talk about pre-project work, and that's on the agenda for this evening. Dr. Woodley and Dr. B, I don't know his full last name, Dr. B from the Family Institute, our new medical providers. They met with our team on October 15th, discussed protocols for concussions and things of that nature, and gave contact information for our nurses so that they can be in contact with them as need be. We have the athletic trainer. We have an interview set up for next Monday. That was a tough one to get applicants for, so we're really hopeful that this applicant on Monday will be someone that we can move forward, but that is a very specialized position, so if it's not the right fit, we're not gonna move forward, we'll try to go back out and see if we can find someone else. So that will be coming. Just a reminder, the Ed Foundation doing the Hall of Fame inductions, that's next Wednesday, the 3rd at 6 p.m.
We're sold out for that event.
That is sold out, yes.
125.
Oh, awesome.
It's that Bad Seed Cider Company, so.
No wonder it's sold out.
Just a reminder to the board members, and I'll put this in my Friday update just to remind you, we will be doing building walkthroughs next Tuesday, the 2nd, 5:30 at the elementary school. And then we say 6:45 at the middle school, but as soon as we're done with the elementary school, we'll drive up to the middle school. So if it's sooner, we'll get there sooner. If it's a little later, that's fine. We'll make sure that we get to point out the things that are on that building condition survey so you can get to see the things that are near or end of life. And then on November 9th at 5:30, we will start at the high school, and that will be just prior to any exec sessions and the board meeting. We will get a message out via school messenger next week to the families that the early evacuation drill is on Thursday, the 4th. That's one of those 15-minute early dismissal drills. And Maggie, I already talked about you. You were on my list here, but I put you earlier in the list. So thank you. Any questions?
No, other than I got a phone call this afternoon from Deborah Happy. She said she will be in attendance
Oh, good.
this coming Wednesday also.
Awesome. Hopefully she paid already, because otherwise we couldn't see.
I saw her on the list.
All right, she's on the list.
We'll find room for her.
Actually, I think an assemblyman
Yes,
is going to join us.
Assemblyman Jacobson is going to be there as well,
Oh.
with Nate,
With
that was
Nate.
here this evening.
Yep.
Actually, she did ask me how you were doing also.
Did she? She actually texts me every couple of days, probably twice in the last month, to see how things are going, so thank you.
Could be good this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We just saw her at Niscus. We saw her and Roseanne Bain.
Oh,
Brought back a lot of memories.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of laughs.
Yeah,
It was fun. So,
good folks.
all right,
Good.
I'm good.
Board of Education, new business. We have item number 1, certification of lead evaluation of classroom teachers. Be it resolved that the Board of Education pursuant to the provisions of education law, section 3012-D and part 30-3.10 of the Regents rules hereby certifies that the following individuals have completed all the necessary training to be certified as lead evaluators of classroom teachers for the 2021-2022 school year. As listed, yeah. Either way, a little recognition for everybody. As listed. Can I have a motion, please? Sue and Ed, any discussion about these people? None? All in favor?
Yeah.
Anybody opposed?
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if everybody.
Yes, here.
That's
Yeah.
That's why I said Dutchess Bosse's, just to see if you were paying attention.
We can put her in elementary school to drop the class over, apparently they've got 20 gun packs.
So carried.
World.
All right. Memorandum of Agreement. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon recommendation of the superintendent, approves the memorandum of agreement between Highland Central School District and the Highland Teachers Association as presented in this attached agreement. I have a motion with Al and Ed. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? 6, nothing. Okay. Third, agreement, this is a revised resolution for the CS Arch agreement. Be it resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approves the agreement between Highland Central School District and Collins and Scoville Architecture, DBA CS Arch for the pre-referendum planning design services as noted in the attached agreement. And one condition here is subject to final review and recommendation from the district's attorney. Can I have a motion? Yeah, Heather and Al. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Nobody opposed. Thank you. Okay, old business, capital project updates.
So in your update, you should have gotten the, project list, the prioritized list, if anyone needs a copy.
Yep.
I have an extra copy here. Want another one? Just take one and pass them around. So as we had been talking about, the administration had a list of needs that were identified last spring. We were waiting on the building condition survey to match up the two. We got that and gave you the building condition survey at the last meeting. And then over the last 2 weeks, myself, Mrs. McLaren, and Mr. Miller sat and organized them into a format where, we married them together, and then we came up with a priority in different groups, A being the highest priority, down to E. And then any big items that fell under any particular building, we left as unprioritized so that that conversation could happen at the board level. So if you look at the list, it's broken up into buildings and grounds, elementary school, middle school, and high school. So I know, I did send this out in the Friday update. I'm not sure if people have had a chance to take a good look at it. Now that we have the CS Arch folks approved, we will try to get some costs to each of these items. I know Mr. Barone during the support services committee, because he's in the business, was able to give some preliminary numbers, so I don't know how you want to proceed, if you want to start with that, Al, or do we want to talk through each section?
Give it up to Tom if he wants to go from, building to building. How you want?
Yeah, that's okay. That's not a bad approach to it. Start obviously with the elementary school. Let's see, just 1 second.
So and then if there are any particular questions about items on here, myself and Mrs. McLaren will be able to answer some of them, and Mr. Miller is also in the audience tonight. I don't believe Mr. Miller will be able to be at the tours on Tuesday, but he will make sure that we get toured so that we can point out the things that are most important in at least the elementary and the middle school.
Right up to that, does anybody have any question on any particular item? Read through the whole list. Even as far as that you think maybe it might, one of these items might warrant an A instead of a B or a C or a D, or why didn't we think?
Yeah, so A would be high priority, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 13, roofs. My understanding, aren't we still under warranty with these roofs? I mean, we just redid the one here at the high school.
Well, this is the note next to it.
Yeah, the note next to it shows that it's not the whole roof, these are the eaves at the gym exits. So this is not the whole roof, it's just at those sections
I
by
think
the,
what's difficult about this is there's no quantity, right? If I'm in my mind trying to,
well, that's where we're going next with money.
and that's why it's like, all right, so it's just the eaves.
Mr. Miller, am I correct?
whatever
Yes,
that
it's,
is. What's an
they
eave?
put, back after they built the building, they put
Just
3
that little
small
overhang?
roofs over the gym exits so the water wouldn't get to the gym floor.
Really just attachments to that outside wall above the door.
I mean, some of these, what comes to mind is how come we're just not built in to the regular budget, like emergency lighting? I mean, I don't know what that entails, but it's those lighting units on the wall with a battery, right? So why does that make it to a capital project list? Some of them I'm just having difficulty wrapping around.
Some of that would get to a capital project list if there was, and if there's gonna be a lot of electrical work done in the building for other things, you would tie that to that. Yes, it can be and would be and possibly should be a, maintenance expense or something to do that, but if, there are, other things going on with electrical work that might be tied to it. One of the things in, I don't know what number it is, but the G wing in the high school, the units are end of life. They're in here, I think we gave them a low priority, and they would be, something that would be kicked out and come back to O&M.
Okay. So, we have adequate space at Highland Elementary, I'm hearing. I don't see the addition of any classrooms. We've got adequate space, because you heard Mr. Barone earlier. This capital project will push out over a 10-year period. So, there's no space issues at the elementary school. We can house current and future programs for the next 10 to 14 years. That's what I see here. Which is good. That's good.
We get close on some of them now.
I think Mike, you're making a good point there. I think that's the overall discussion we have to have. If you look at this list, and you look at numbers 7, 29, 63, and 67, and 98, I believe it is, those are the items that haven't been addressed in the building
Any of these,
condition
all right.
survey or by the administrator. So
Okay.
I think if we're gonna direct our design team to look at those items and put a cost to them, we gotta decide if we're gonna move forward in that direction. Or do we wanna move forward into developing some of those areas that some districts are leading towards? You know, we wanna move into the 21st century with, technology and outdoor learning spaces and such. We gotta have a discussion.
So
Like
there's
I
some
said,
visioning needed, right?
yes,
As to where,
and we have to kind of move if we're looking to put this thing out to the voters in May.
This is generally housekeeping, it doesn't include revisions that,
Right.
anyway, all right.
Well, this project is based on zero impact. I mean, if you're saying this next zero impact project is 10 years from now, that doesn't mean that if there's an explosion in this district, that in 5 years, you're gonna have a project that would have impact.
the population explosion.
Just to clarify.
No, understood.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want you to think that, we're not gonna spend any money for 10 years. I mean, you don't know where you're gonna go.
No, that's why I also asked that the replenishment of reserve funds go along also to help pick off a few things. But as you highlighted, Al, with those couple big ticket items, that was my pointed question to Dr. Corey earlier at the end of that meeting about the air conditioning in all the classroom space. And, here we have a question before us about possibly wanting to air condition out, all 3 of our campuses, and using maybe the funds for our capital project, whereas that is gonna, in their project, they're gonna be doing that within their district, bringing themselves up to that standard. They're obviously not there yet, but as a result of this project, that's what they're gonna be doing. And unfortunately, some things that we want to spend some money on and use and earmark, we're gonna have to shift things around to accommodate the BOCES project.
Well, I think that's another, you have to bring that
That's a
up
whole
into another
different-
discussion.
No, but I'm just saying, that's why I asked that question, to see where they were sitting with it.
Attach that to this project and reduce the scope here,
Yeah.
or we're gonna handle that as a separate.
Well, and I think if you heard Dr. Corey, he said air conditioning in those 3 sites is $13 million. So if you take a look at air conditioning at our 3 sites, maybe it's not the same amount, but it's probably somewhere in that ballpark, would be my rough guess.
And that's just about
So
wipes
that
out.
wipes out the whole,
That's why not having some cost estimates on some of these.
No, I understand that, but we
We're
could
gonna,
get,
we're gonna get all that costed out, but, you know, the first project I worked on when I came to Highland was, we had 78 things on the list.
Right.
And we probably had about 20% of the money we needed for that list. This list is 90-some items on it, and with the amount that we're projecting, even before BOCES, wouldn't cover this list.
So an A priority is equivalent to a high priority?
Correct.
Yeah. And we did juggle some around, we did reprioritize some things, so it was,
So if you want to speak about air conditioning, I mean, I'm not a proponent of putting air conditioning in every space in all three of our buildings.
I'm not necessarily either, I'm just pointing out some.
I've heard comments this past week that, I'm going to use the middle school. Teachers and staff were complaining it was too cold, and here it is only October, and we really haven't had a day of frost yet. So, I mean, the necessity for air conditioning is probably the month of September, maybe a week or two in October, and end of May into June. In June, everybody's wrapping things up. The high school's into the Regents Week and testing, and that happens the second week, and you're all done. So I don't, and this is just me speaking, I don't see the necessity to fully air condition our building at this point. I think down the road, if education's gonna go to 12 months in trimesters at some point in time, the feds or the states are gonna have to fund the school to furnish air conditioning, if that's gonna happen. I mean, they just can't put it all on the local school district. So I would say, we did the auditorium at one point in time, so what was the last project or the past project? I mean, if there's any other
2016.
large venue areas that we want air conditioning, maybe that's something that we look at. I mean, we have to give our design team a direction to follow here. If we want some of these large ticket items to come, I
yeah, I don't think it's reasonable that they sit and they cost every single thing out
No.
here. I don't think that's gonna be possible in the amount of time we're giving them.
It's not gonna be accurate today.
Right. So if we can,
And I think they're gonna ask questions about something like air conditioning. What are you thinking of? What are the priorities? And we'll give them some guidelines on that thing.
Right.
As far as, maybe it's the cafeteria, maybe it's, it might be crazy, but maybe the gym or something like that, or some other big spaces where there's large use.
Yeah, because the big push from state ed to school districts in the past 5 years has been moving air circulation. We did that at the middle school, we did that at the elementary school. And the purpose of that is to, in the evening in those setbacks, you bring in that cool air and it circulates throughout the building to kind of keep the daytime temperatures at a steady thing. And that's what's happening. And a lot of school districts I've worked in, staff and I've really said that, there's a difference. There's a difference when you have those warm days because it's the cool nights are filtered into the classrooms during the day and they last a lot longer as far as maintaining that stable air.
well, air movement in itself.
I'm just gonna speak for myself and then I'll keep quiet. I've always said this district needs a maintenance facility. We run, I don't know how many buses, 40, 32, 36 buses we have now in our fleet, or somewhere around there.
A few more.
We don't have a real modern maintenance facility. I gotta credit both Kathy and Pete for having 100% inspection reports, and we're working out of a building that was constructed in 1960 or 61, whatever it was, and maybe retrofitted once or twice along the way. That's a priority. We invest in a lot of equipment for athletics and field maintenance and ground maintenance and all that, and everything is sometimes left outside in the elements until we have room to put them inside. We need that facility to keep our investment to kind of go a long distance. And I know there's been talk, Sue sent an email out, I think this morning, talked to a few community members. I know Mike has talked to quite a few, there's talk about a turf field. I mean, I'm looking at those are the three large items, air conditioning, the maintenance facility, and turf field. But there's a lot of other areas we can improve the educational experience. I think outdoor learning facilities is a big thing, because we just gone through 18 months of a pandemic, and everybody, didn't want to be in the room, you'd rather be outside. So that might be the new norm, moving some learning experiences outside in the pavilion and some type of outdoor setting, build a greenhouse at the high school for learning abilities. I mean, I'm a proponent of the trades, do something in that area. But, Mike mentioned it earlier, doesn't see, do we have enough space for our staff?
Yeah, listen, you can't just put a turf field on it, that has to be connected to some level of building improvement, and that's, when I see here, I see a lot of stuff, I just can't connect it with student learning necessarily.
Well,
I can connect, I know you call it air conditioning, but I'm gonna call it climate control, because if that's all well and good, one of the first things when we're building, and I'm just trying to draw an equity line, one of the first things we're doing when we're talking about office renovations, air conditioning's right at the top of the list. So I'm just trying to draw that equity line. If it's important enough for offices and administrators and all of our adults to work properly in their setting, I'm just trying to draw that same parallel that I would advocate in a children's setting, that's equally important as climate control. Is that a value? I don't know. We need to see more community members come through the front door, because Mike Picazius advocating for climate control isn't gonna cut it. And it's gonna be a big ticket item at least 1.5 per building.
Of the parents I talked to,
Yeah.
climate control was on the list.
At the same time, around climate control, when I do look at these lists, I see a lot of stuff connected to climate control. Number 9, eliminate pneumatic HVAC controls. There's some other areas that address controls, boilers, again, climate-related items. So if we quantify all that, maybe there's a conversation there. Maybe the top floor of the middle school is fine on a 70, 75-degree day. I think everybody's real comfortable up there. Again, these are things that people need to advocate for, internal publics and external publics. I hate ceiling grids. We're finding that doing away with these ceiling grids and recapturing depth and capacity in rooms is, in some ways, you get different lighting options than these
and one of the things
seat-in items.
that I would point out, number 10, those folding walls that are in the classrooms at the elementary school are beyond end of life. They're unsafe, and if we want to make those classrooms this century, getting some permanent walls there with electric so that we can actually get technology plugged into these classrooms and not from that, Mike, you probably remember that, the poles that were dropped in the middle of the room. They're not in the right location for what we need for flexible learning spaces in those classrooms. So if we want to bring elementary up to a place where it looks modern and you can use those rooms in a way where one room is not impeding on the next one because the walls are paper thin and some of them are not closed all the way. They're, that one door at the end is slightly loose. Those are not fixable any longer, but that's a huge expense. We did some preliminary discussions about that, and that right there might be over $1 million, just those walls. And the electric in those rooms to bring those rooms up to some sense of,
Well, I think if you are talking about HVAC, fixing those walls is an important part of that as well. If you're talking about climate control, it's going to be more efficient if you have your room closed off and you don't have things.
If we just pull out the A's. Is that unreasonable for the designers to give us a quote? There's a lot of A's.
We could start with the A's, absolutely. I think that probably would help them like target, so they get us
Yeah.
something back pretty quickly, but yeah, no, we definitely could do that. But the bigger ticket items, those are gonna take some more time. You know, maybe turf might not take more time to do, but a whole new facility, that may take, you know, they don't just have them like
Right.
cost it out somewhere, so we'd have to give them some ideas on what we want in those spaces. You know, turf is the same no matter where you get it, but, you know, what is our base like? What is the
Yeah.
rehabilitation to the, you know, is there something that needs to be done underneath? I don't necessarily know that.
Well, and do you wanna look at the press box and the, you know, the whole,
Well, so you start eating away at the edges, then you
Correct.
start talking about drainage.
Right.
Why piecemeal it?
right.
What's it take?
Absolutely.
What's the
If you're gonna
design
do the whole
concept
thing,
out
make
there?
it whole complex.
We've redone the drainage there, probably the last 2 projects.
Yeah.
If we have saved money, if we packaged it correctly the first time, I don't.
Well, then you also have to look at what the ratios are, like what is allowed at each site, and then if you looked at that from the
Yeah.
original, the high school was allowed the least amount, under those ratios, so, will that all fit? I don't remember what that number was, it was 2.8, 2.9. Is that enough to do that one project? I don't know.
You know, when I see serving line in there, Maria, speak on, I see serving line, I've been tough on kitchens, I think, in the past, I'm probably gonna continue that trend. But I'm just like, how, we change them every so often. I think we just adjusted the serving lines in all the buildings in the last capital project.
I think there was.
Or the one before.
I'm not quite sure what is in there, but there's 2 pieces at the middle school that were not replaced out of the whole serving line. So,
2 pieces of like equipment?
of
Yes.
of the serving line. So those are cold wells,
Yep, that's what it
and
is.
the food sits down in a dark hole with no lighting. So I would suggest that you try to keep the line that you have updated. We got that, 2 years ago? And put in 2 refrigerator units like we have at the high school.
Okay.
It's bright, it's marketable for your food, it just makes everything look more appetizing. And then you have one complete.
And around how much money are we talking
I
about?
think those were
15
like.
grand,
Oh, no,
13,000, 13?
No, those were like, I wanna say $6,000 maybe.
Yeah,
units.
see,
And where does that come out of
that's
the-
not,
yeah.
No.
It's not
that's-
capital
that's
enough.
maintenance, yeah, that's,
but yet it's got a rating of A. You know, it's a strange list. I think I'm gonna continue looking at the list and asking questions. and
Well, it is a good question, because when you put the numbers on it, that kind of levels it out to say,
Yeah.
how are we gonna fund this if we don't fund it through capital?
How come we didn't buy it tomorrow? Like, what's stopping us from getting that line
As a
or doing
facilities
it?
maintenance, yeah.
Like, you've got maintenance built into some of these departments annually, and I question, are we doing anything with that money? Or we're just putting it in,
Yeah, I mean, to be very specific with that, I know.
or we're just collapsing it in fund
I'd be all
balance
for
each
pricing
year,
it out
isn't that
and
right?
replacing it tomorrow, that'd be
Oh.
nice.
There's some items like that that I'm just thinking about.
Anybody have any questions on any other items?
We have one meeting scheduled in November, we only have one for November and one for December. We gotta move this along, just throw it out there, I mean, you gotta take the lead and push it. You got this to work on, and Dr. Corey wants an answer by probably the first week of December, which gives us one meeting to have that discussion. I mean, otherwise, we're just gonna be spinning our wheels and sitting back and waiting for the drop.
I mean, do we wanna have any preliminary conversations right now
Well, maybe it'd be better.
about BOCES, since
Oh,
it was
right.
it was just freshly,
I'm gonna say regarding this, if everyone would get its own digest it, and then perhaps we just circulate emails amongst ourselves.
Well, I like
to find out.
taking the A's and let's cost it out and see where we're at. I mean.
But as you pointed out, some of the
You
eight
know, and
items
it doesn't have to be
fit into
exact
climate
or rough,
control,
but
you know, the middle school boiler issues. We see other areas of air conditioning, we're talking for libraries and cafeterias. Perhaps it is a bigger environmental, we package the whole thing as an environmental issue. Look at it that way.
Well, if we're looking at boilers, I mean, does that have, is air conditioning a part of the, you know,
Well, if you're doing
Put it all
climate
together.
control, some of them
That's what I'm
involve
saying,
heat
yeah.
pumps along with the air conditioning.
right, so if
It's
you
a
put it all
question
together.
to ask, are the units we just put in the elementary school, we were asking if they're modifiable to add in air cooling, and we were gonna check on that. I don't know if we ever found out yet. I know Pete's not busy doing everything else, but. And that.
Well, we have an idea moving forward. Look at the A's, see where that puts us.
You do that.
I think if there's questions or comments that, as a group, we should email them to support services so we have them, so we can get answers, or at least attempt to get an answer before we have a discussion.
yeah, I mean, we'll forward them to Tom and Joel, and then they should
Great.
share accordingly,
And then I think,
right?
are we agreed on at least the three major projects that we're thinking of incorporating with these are the turf, which will include a press box and bleachers, so that will be one thing for CSR to look at. The other is a maintenance facility building, and then the third being climate control, if we can incorporate all of those into a climate control package.
Well, we also, if we were to do something out around the sports complex, looking at storage, or we're gonna have to accommodate that storage.
I'd like to see that
Somewhere
become
else.
a classroom. If we're gonna turn the press box, if we're gonna make a press box, I'd like to tie it to educational purposes so we can get that classroom.
You're not gonna get 8 on it.
No, even if
We
it's,
asked that question multiple times in multiple different ways, and people have asked it
We're not gonna get aid on what?
on turning the press box into a classroom.
Oh, what if it's a classroom and not a press box?
My,
It's a remote classroom, it's a remote classroom to incorporate
It's not.
you know, journalism, sports journalism and,
I tried, my friend.
I'm just saying that.
I tried.
Given the square footage, don't worry about it.
But Peter, are we looking for storage out there?
We'll talk about
Or are we
this.
trying to-
We need, we can try it, but we could also hold it up by thinking we're gonna get 8 on that,
No,
and then
no,
we're
I
not.
understand that.
I mean, Victoria, myself, and Pete, we asked different folks at Bernie Donigan's office. We should have asked him again tonight, because he would have been like, I told you that already. But we've come at him in 3 different ways, so,
I gotta tell you,
Yeah.
about the facilities building out there, there is some merit when Al was kicking around developing another campus. I know we all like to be here at the high school, but I gotta tell you, I'm less than thrilled with all those buses covering our facility. So if there's a way to, you know, we had talked about what does the property behind there look like, and could additional bus storage be there?
behind the high school, up on the hill, you mean?
Yeah, I
Look
talked to-
behind the facilities building.
I talked to CS Arch and their engineer with Dion, the architect, to look at that,
Okay.
prior to us having a conversation about the agreement of moving forward. So that can have a quick assessment on that, you know, somebody can throw a dart at it and say, if there's, you know, $1.5 million worth of site work, it's not gonna work.
Right.
Okay, so if it comes out that, you know, there's $500,000 worth of grading in and putting a metal building up and calling it a maintenance facility for buses and whatever, so it works. The question was asked about storage. Storage is not aidable. A maintenance facility that's aidable as a bus facility and we do store stuff in it is a go. We have all kinds of athletic stuff that's stuck and stuffed everywhere that we need to get organized and out of shipping containers and into places that are acceptable as storage on a school facility.
Get rid of the Conex boxes and stuff like that.
Just don't see it. We're challenged here with the land and the property.
I would love to regain the campus footage where the buses are parked, if we could move those back and regain part of the campus. I think despite the fact that we get 100% rating on the maintenance of the buses, they are an eyesore for them to be present on the high school campus. You know, just to have them jammed there. It would be nice to have them in their own, you know, area.
Well,
I don't think it's an eyesore, I think it's pride, we have our own buses.
Well,
But at the same time,
but when
to
you're trying to
regain-
turn out to get out, and you
regain,
have
yes,
to circle around
absolutely,
fast to get through
absolutely.
between the
But I
dumpsters
don't
and the
wanna say
buses.
eyesore.
Well, I think.
But definitely to regain
No,
our
I'm saying
own
as far as the campus,
property, absolutely.
for our campus viewpoint, it is, you know, when things are in
But the
business flux,
field
you
that
know.
was put on the tennis court is beautiful. When that was lit up the other night at the football game,
I think
it
that's
really
where-
was a sense of pride.
We didn't realize the area was absorbing so many buses,
Yeah,
Yes.
clearly. So when we turned it into a field, they got displaced, and now it's
Yeah.
like, where'd all these buses come
it was a
from?
lot
All
of
these
buses on
parking
that
lots.
space.
Well, there's a convenience to having the buses close by. It would be better if they were on the other side of Sundial Lane. You know, and you had a level facility to park at, so you can open this up, because obviously Friday night, there's not enough parking when you have an event of any size here. And it just is a problem. We have 58 acres here, and all but 17 of it is straight up and down solid
Yeah.
rock.
Right. Well. We need rock to become a commodity.
Well,
Is that a mining program?
You gotta find that rare aluminum that's in that rock that you can.
the holding area.
Yes, there's lithium buried in that hill.
All right, any other clear? 'Cause we could,
Answering Joel's question, looking at Bernie Donegan's spreadsheet back in September, what they consider the incidentals, the ratio, it looks like, if I'm reading this right, that at the middle school's got the most that we can
Yep.
attack for incidentals, like 3.5 million. This is based on the $16 million project. The high school is 2.6 million, the elementary is 2.6. The middle school's footprint is so small that you can't expand incidentals there and use up 3.5 million. That's probably why it's that much higher, because we haven't done anything there.
What's the definition of incidental? What does that mean?
I believe though, that's the area outside of what they consider that educational piece, that you get that
Oh, okay.
full 72% aid on it,
I think that's
if I'm
right.
not mistaken.
So the new bus
The
project
incidental
on
would be if you're doing paving upgrades,
Got it.
athletic fields or whatever.
All changed.
And there's only a percentage that you can do at each building that's not, okay, got it.
Based on like the 5-year,
Yeah.
the 5 previous
Yeah,
years?
yeah. And this is for an SVD approval of 2023, which makes sense.
And we had Bernie Donegan's office do a preliminary, it was a rough, but it was like 11 million something when you take the BOCES thing into consideration and just keep it at a no impact across the board if we were gonna fold that in.
Yeah, if you're gonna float the.
Because that's what we wanted to know, since we had talked about keeping everything at a no increase, what would that be for us if we folded that in? And it was a little over 11 million
So it seems like
that we
from
have left.
what I heard tonight is if we keep the BOCES at 3.3 million of our share separate, and we fund it through our general budget, that's one option. And then our bond stays at 15, 16 million, whatever it is. Or if you, like you said, if you float that into there, then you reduce our hard costs down to 11 million.
Right.
Or
Well, the
less.
difficult part with all of that is those options are only there if this passes in all component schools.
Correct.
But I think that the other thing with that is if it doesn't pass in the component schools, I don't know that they'll be able to do a full vote by, Sue, you might know. Did they talk about that in your meetings? If this doesn't pass by all the components and it goes to a countywide vote, are they still slated to have that countywide vote at the same time that they, like at the same time as of ours, like in May?
Yes,
Yeah?
I do believe they did say that.
That goes on the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So that's
Countywide.
that's another hit too, if people are coming out to do the BOCES vote, at the same time, they do a vote for us, plus our regular,
that's why we don't wanna
General budget.
entertain a countywide vote on the
Correct.
BOCES side. Assisting them in their renovation need now is probably best for all.
because then it becomes
And then
yesterday's
the other
history.
thing is, we want our kids that we send there, which are many, for various reasons, to have updated and proper facilities as well. I mean, he repeated that 1989 number. That was our last capital project. I mean, they're good about managing in-house projects, but it just sounds like
I was in
it's time to address, yeah, most of their needs.
Yeah.
So I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, I don't see anything. I know we gotta work the financing in, but I do wanna support the request. Because it just seems,
They sent in the packet the agreement that we would be voting on. You know, we could do that at the November 9th meeting. We could continue conversations. We probably should just put it on the agenda, and if you decide to table it, then we move it to the December meeting, but I think we probably should just get it on there so that it forces us to make those.
yeah, to look at the financing of it, the best option for us.
And just a question I had, if we don't fold it into our building project and we do it as a separate thing, I assume that impacts this community's taxes. Is it the same ratio that we might look at, you know, for our regular general fund? So if it's, you know, every so $100,000, it's this much of an impact
So
on
they
a tax
said,
pay?
they actually said that they would figure that out for us.
That was my question, like, what would that look like, actually?
But I think they only figure that out if it ends up going to a countywide vote. If all of the component districts vote for it, then it's done.
No, I know that, it's
But I
more
think-
for us to make a decision about whether we do it as part of our general fund,
Oh,
or
I see
whether,
what
you
you're
know,
saying.
Because it
what,
won't pierce the cap, like you mentioned, it won't pierce the
yeah.
cap.
Well, it's excludable, right?
Lisa?
Yes,
So-
I just wanted to interrupt that the BOCES countywide vote is always that Wednesday, what we do in April, and I just confirmed it with the calendar, it's April 20th. Is the countywide vote. You know how we
But
always,
They're
No,
gonna
this is-
send it
That's
out
just
to
a
the
normal
citizens of
budget.
the county.
oh,
Yeah, this is a different.
different,
thing.
It's a
okay,
different
okay,
vote.
thanks.
So if you look at our levy, it's 29.9 million, so 1% of our levy is 299,000.
yeah.
So even though it's excluded from the cap, that means we're not exceeding the cap by the calculation, but it's still
But
increasing
it's still
the
gonna
tax
increase
levy.
their taxes
You
by
know, a couple of
whatever
those
amount.
years, it's, you know, it could be up to 2% of an impact on our whole levy.
Right, that was my question, you know, so what,
I don't know what that is on a typical $100,000
but is that
house,
something that
but-
we can find out, because that might,
Yeah.
you know, it might help the conversation to understand exactly what the impact for taxpayers would be if you're not folding it into, you know, into the
Right.
building project, the Highland building project.
You're correct, I mean, they both pay the taxpayers when they vote.
Right,
You increase the budget, or you,
right,
Let me double check it for you, just to make sure that if it does get voted down, when would BOCES put it out to the vote? But I'm pretty sure he said May 22.
I would think so.
that means.
I don't wanna entertain
Pete,
that.
before I forget, Mike brought up a really good point. If we pull out all these As, could we dismiss those that could be part of the regular operating budget? Where, for
Sure.
instance, he mentioned before, the emergency lighting, that
I
does
think,
to
I
me.
think we take all the As and Bs and get them priced out, and then we sort out the ones that we wanna drop off of there that would be
Routine,
normal
like routine
stuff.
yearly.
I mean, if you're looking at something like, Maria's cold line stuff, we bought ice machines and refrigerators and things in the past through whatever kind of creative financing we've done to do that it doesn't go into a capital project. Because when you take those kind of items and you put them into a capital project, you got all the incidentals on top of that add to the cost of them, or you could just buy them outright and then you're done.
If that thing's only $6,000, you buy it, I think the roof. I did raise it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I was wondering what that meant. Okay. Okay.
You haven't been punished by third one yet. We have.
It's 9:50. By the way,
All right, so we're gonna put the BOCES thing up on the next board meeting, and if we need to table it, we will to the December 7th meeting, but we're gonna cost out the As and the Bs. And as soon as I have that, I'll send it to you in an email hopefully prior to the next board meeting. And then on Tuesday, we will do the tour of the middle school and the elementary school, pointing out the things that are noted on this. 5:30, and I'll send that to you again on Friday.
Don't be too disappointed, I might be there early, so for the early part of it, so.
Oh, you're coming?
I might be there.
Oh, that's great. If you wanna start earlier, he'll be there the whole time.
I won't put that with consent agenda, would I?
And then you can start earlier,
We're not
'cause
sure that they're gonna.
that's your issue.
Thank you.
Do you have
Tuesday. Election day, there's no school. You have work though.
So Pete, we have a direction before? Pete, we have a direction.
Was it been
before?
recent?
Hold on one second. If we can start at 5,
Can she
would
be
be
sent
able
it?
to
I'll
get
send her
both
an
buildings
email.
done.
Okay, thank you, because I do use that.
I'll be pretty close if we walk.
Well, we wanna have the board.
What about if we
Oh, we
run?
do need
If we run, we'll get done
You
sooner.
follow
next
his
year.
I know, that's right.
I didn't get it.
But bring your
Next
sneakers.
Tuesday, election day.
So,
If we can
I'm
move it
gonna
back
email
to
her.
5, Pete might be able to be there for almost all of, do that, Mike?
Can't figure it
No?
out.
We can
That might be
we'll-
tight for Camille.
It might be.
For next Tuesday?
Yeah. All right, so we'll send a text out. We don't have to know today, we'll send it out at the end, like at the end of the week if you can. All right? All right, great.
Contact will be made to you, sir.
Yep,
Yes.
first thing in the morning.
Thank
If
you.
Victoria hasn't already sent it to them.
We're all good with that, that's where we'll sit right now and contact us regarding questions and or what you think are priorities. Miscellaneous. Correspondence? No, open meeting law.
I submitted that in your board agenda, or your, about the open meeting law, the changes there, so, just basically, we've been putting most of our information, up in plenty of time to meet that, but we just have to make sure that we're very diligent and.
You wouldn't have met
But
with
think
some of
that
these
are-
items here, though.
These would be
You're not
items that
aware.
are in discussion, no.
But you're allowed to have some of these discussion things at last minute.
They cleaned it up and it left us the opportunity to, like you said, add something at a moment's notice last minute.
I mean, obviously, we don't want it to be that way, and we're doing our best to not have that, but
Not
under the
intent.
circumstances, we're trying to push these things
I
as
don't have
quickly as,
this on it, but.
but, it can only go as fast as the folks get back to you, so.
We're pretty transparent here. I mean, this
Who can you call now, because Bob Friedman's not there anymore. He was like the guru of open meeting law.
Guru of Robert's Rules of Order, right? He always pulled that one out.
Well, I was reading something
He got-
today, it
He
was
got sanctioned though.
about
Call him every
just about
day.
the Zoom
Listen to
meetings,
him
like,
anymore.
some people want that option that people can, Zoom in, so there's like hybrid meetings, that's in discussion now in Albany, so.
Let's move it, Tom. These people gotta
Yeah,
get home.
no,
They
that's
gotta get
all.
up early.
Believe me,
What's that?
so do we. Any public comments? Public comments? No? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn? Heather?
Miss Marianne?
Heather and who else? So,
She's on vacation.
You need
Oh,
to-
good, okay.
We can plan them around.
We're gonna tack another hour. She usually plans it around. Marianne.
thank you.
Thank you.
Did you give her the? Did you give her the?
So I gotta get,
So what you got?
I have to get a longer one.